Are you a politician with a ridiculous point to make? Are you in need of a petulant, outdated way to make it? Then you'll need one of my signs. Hi, I'm Simon Simonson of Simonson Signs. We'll take the stupid, over-the-top, meaningless allegory you have and put it on foam core. So maybe someone will notice your grandstanding. Because this is C-SPAN, and anything that's not people milling around in front of a running vote count is almost considered moderately entertaining. The bar is low, just like our prices. We've got plenty of designs. We also brought you Mike Lee's Tauntauns. They're tons of fun. What does this have to do with the Green New Deal? About as much as this other visual aid he used of Reagan on a T-Rex. Or is that a velociraptor? Who cares? Who the cares? No one gives a. Call us now at Simon Simonson Signs. We'll make your stupid point stupidly for money today.
Viewers had asked for an interview with the TYT Lizard. Mr. Lizard. Oh, you changed colors today. Nice. I don't even know how you feel about us. Do you even like us?
Well, you guys made me this awesome house, so I'm kind of in your debt. I was found outside on the street, and you gave me a home. Granted, it was a really crappy home for a while, but then through the power of fundraising, I became a person who has a multi-level Trump-style mansion.
You do. By the way, you've never looked better, man. Normally, you're just green or just brown, but today you're in mid-lizard, right?
I'm not very smart. I'm a lizard, so I don't know how the science works. I guess this is just my mood. It's not every day that thresholds like this are broken. I'm just so excited. I can't contain my pigmentation.
And now you're showing it off.
Yep.
Yeah, I've never seen the lizard like this before.
That 300 million is a pretty good number. We were doing a press release on it, and I got all worked up. And I said, okay, well, that's the size of the U.S. population. You know what our next target is? The size of the entire world on the road to 6 billion. Although by the time we hit it, it'll probably be 7, maybe 8 billion.
Not a big deal. A couple of days ago on the TYT network, we passed 1 billion views.
What the hell?
What the hell?
That's a big freaking deal.
2 billion views.
What now?
Sorry.
What did we do? 2 billion?
2 billion.
They said it couldn't be done, but it was done.
We just crossed 5 billion views on YouTube.
I mean, imagine 10 years ago thinking, one day.
We looked at you like, are you nuts? Young Turks crosses 6 billion views. Young Turks has just passed another milestone, 10 billion views.
Damn.
I just shot a clip. It's time sensitive and it needs to be edited
right now.
Did anybody call for an editor?
Need this in an hour.
But you're an editor too.
Hello and welcome to Staying Home, your revolutionary guide to the Green New Deal. I'm Josh Fox. Today, we're going to talk with Jovanka Beckles. She is running for transit board in California, and her platform is about a transit Green New Deal. And if you follow me on Twitter, you know that I often go on Twitter and rail against the MTA in New York City because it's so poorly run, but also because it's so expensive. Fares are a poor tax. Fare. You think about it. Oh, well, you get on the subway, you pay 50 cents. You get on the subway, you pay $2. You get on the subway, you pay $3. This adds up. Who rides the subway? Most people. For rich people, you can afford the subway. For poor people, it's a poor tax. That's what we have to talk about in terms of abolishing fares, making sure that we don't have that happening. But I'm really excited for today's discussion because this is something that is a very, very deep issue for me. That public transportation should be for the public, should be free. And it should be because we tax the wealthy to get there. And because fares there's so many things in our society that we just accept as normal. They're actually a poor tax. Parking tickets are a poor tax. Subway fares are a poor tax. Bus fares are a poor tax. Because rich people park their car in a garage, right? Rich people take taxis and limousines. Some of them even take helicopters. Talk about being bad for the environment right now, right? So these things that we are readily accepted as our part of our society are actually, especially as the minimum wage does not keep pace with the standard of the cost of living, right? Or wages don't keep track, even if it isn't minimum wage. These things have to be examined. So we need a new Green New Deal for transit. And it's really terrific that we have on the program today, Jovanka Beckles, to talk about that. So here she is. Jovanka, thank you so much for being on the show today. This is a big issue for me, right? Coming from New York, also living in New Orleans, living in Chicago at a certain point in time.
Yes.
We don't see these fares as oppressive because most people make enough money to be like, all right, whatever. But there's a whole different part of this to your platform. So let's just begin with you introducing this idea of a Green New Deal for transit, which I think is amazing.
Well, yeah, first of all, thank you. It's such a pleasure to be on your show. Big fan.
Thank you.
You know, the Green New Deal, it can happen. And that's the Green New Deal can happen. But we as cities and municipalities, we really can't wait for it to happen on the federal level. We can make it happen now. We can make it happen at the local level. And that's my plan. I think that what we have to do is we absolutely don't have to continue to accept the kinds of cuts that are proposed right now by austerity-crazed politicians. Right, right now, currently in the Bay Area, they're proposing cutting transit by the budget by 20%. And
so in the Bay Area, where you have more millionaires per capita or billionaires or whatever it is, right? They're saying cut transportation.
Cut transportation, exactly. And I'm running for the AC Transit Board, which is a huge agency in the East Bay's public bus system. But because I'm fighting for transit for the people, because I believe that we can absolutely build a green public transit system that allows all of our working people to get where they need to go to and from. I believe transportation is a freedom. It's a justice that isn't often imposed. This type of justice isn't often expressed and given to poor folk, to the people of color, Black, brown people, students, people who are disabled. But I believe that we definitely can build one where we can have a stable, efficient system with well-paying union jobs, exactly the kinds of jobs that have been important to Black and brown folks. And I mention that because I believe this is also a racial justice issue, creating a Green New Deal around transit. It's possible. It's possible to do this. It's possible to create a fare-free, emissions-free public transit system that can bring us out of this depression that we're currently being faced with.
You know, Ben Jealous was on the program, the former head of the NAACP, now the head of the PFAW, which is the People for United Way, for the American Way Foundation. And he said, if you overlay the communities where you have the largest poverty index from the United Nations, and you put that on top of that, a map of the greatest environmentally degraded areas,
Yes.
and you lay then on top of that the areas which have the most police brutality, they're all the same places.
Absolutely.
And these are often the places that don't have any public transportation.
That's right.
So you're talking about expanding buses and as a template for the future. Talk a bit about the dream of that and why that's a very important thing. We talk about dreaming dangerously on this program, coming out of this incubator, this cocoon of the coronavirus with a new vision of the future. Talk about that expansion that you're wanting to see.
Oh, I want to see it. I want to see an expansion because currently public transit is under attack all over the country, but especially in communities of color.
Right.
And it's a perfect storm. It's a perfect storm when you see these multi-billion-dollar corporations like Uber and Lyft that are still trying to replace this public system with
Right.
their badly exploited gig drivers.
Right.
When we see cuts being made, as he mentioned, to Black and Brown communities, because all of the cuts that are being proposed are in communities of color. And we also know that the AC transit system, 65%, 70% really are Black and Brown people, and the drivers, 80% of the drivers are Black and Brown. So, when you see the perfect storm of these cuts that are being made to communities of color, when you see, and then you put that together with the greed and austerity, it's really the making of a really bad movie, of a nightmare, so to speak. And so that's why I'm proposing a new Green Deal in the transit system, because I think that when we move towards a green fleet, and it's possible because right now the AC transit system has a goal to bring about a zero emissions fleet by 2040. I think we have
2040. That's
2040 exactly. We don't have time. We don't have that long, right?
Zero emissions buses by 2040. How long do they think these buses are going to last? The ones they're buying now.
The ones are exactly. And so that's why it's so important to do this. And so we've seen in cities like Olympus, where they created a fare free system. Ridership improved by about 20%. And so when we get people out of their cars, we reduce emissions, and then we create the kind of freedom that our community needs to be able to get to school, to be able to get to jobs, and to get to our appointments.
It's such a fundamental freedom in America. I think there's a freedom to just be able to get places. The other thing that's happened, and I want to ask you about this in terms of San Francisco. I know this from New York, right? I grew up in New York. I was born in New York. New York had not built a new subway line my entire life. And then they built one in the richest neighborhood in the city, on 2nd Avenue.
Right.
And I lived in a no subway zone near I still do, near the BQE. And they only put in a ferry there to serve the WeWork that's when that WeWork opened up and the rich people started to move in, and gentrification became a big issue in my neighborhood. So gentrification drives a lot of people further and further out who are working people, and their jobs are staying in the center of town, right? So you have to go further and further and further out to live, to be able to afford to live, and further in to be able to just get there. I have to say, you're tuned in to Staying Home. This is Josh Fox. We'll be right back. You're tuned in to Staying Home, your revolutionary guide to the Green New Deal. This is Josh Fox. My guest is Jovanka Beckles, running for transit board in California. We're talking about, so is that the kind of thing that's happened in San Francisco? And I've seen also that Facebook has its own private transportation system for their own employees, that they won't pick up anybody else. Talk a little bit about the situation.
Yeah, Facebook, Google, all those billionaire companies have their own bus line where they pick up their employees. But the same thing is happening here in the Bay Area. People are moving away from San Francisco and Oakland and moving farther and farther away into places that they feel that where housing is affordable. But the problem with that then is that now we see more congested freeways, and of course, as a result of congested freeways, now we're increasing our carbon footprint. Where there's more greenhouse gases that's being emitted because of increased cars, and so that's why I'm proposing a fare-free system, because that's the way. A fare-free system, as well as a faster transition to zero-emission fleet, is what's going to help us with this looming climate catastrophe, that we're seeing. I think that when we expand service, everyone would be then be able to afford it.
Right.
I don't know, Josh, if you know though that AC Transit stopped charging fares during this pandemic right now.
Oh, good. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So the reason they did that is so that riders can safely board from the back of the bus. And I'm going to be fighting to keep those bus fares free for riders, because I think that doing so, of course, as we've been saying, doing so will drastically increase ridership, which reduces the emissions even further.
There's a lot of innovations from coronavirus. I'm going to say innovations from coronavirus, but innovations in response to coronavirus that I would love to see being kept. And that's why I'm so happy about what you're doing and why it's so important to get the message out. Because, for example, New York City, no cars in Manhattan.
Mm-hmm.
New Orleans, no cars in the French Quarter. And I think keep it that way. Because the e-bike, what an innovation for transportation. It helps you exercise. It helps you, it's a much no emissions vehicle. Is there a what are some of the other things that you have seen from this coronavirus moment, right, that you would love to see continue?
I'd love to see the fact that people are not having to pay a fare right now. I'd love to see the fact that there are less cars on the freeway because people are telecommuting. I think that there's, as awful as this virus is, there have been some light at the end of the tunnel, but also some positive things that's come out of it. And in that, in regard to AC Transit, people are being able to ride the bus for free. And I think that's a right. People have a right to education. They have a right to health care and housing. And they need to be able to get to those places, right? So public transportation isn't just that people should be profiting. I don't believe they should be profiting from that. I think it's a service, or should it be, as you mentioned, a service that's reserved for those who can afford to pay, like the rich and the wealthy. We need to make it free so that everyone should be able can use it. And I also want to just say also, Josh, that public transit, it's just like the postal service in this way, right? It's a public good that we should all pay into and benefit from. And we cannot absolutely let politicians use budget problems as an excuse to cut it or privatize it in the form of Lyft and Uber and those.
That's exactly what I think. Lyft and Uber is a reaction to the collapse of public transit. And in New York, I'll tell you this for real, New York's a big place.
Mm-hmm.
You got to get from Brooklyn, you got to get to the Upper West Side. It's going to take you an hour on the train. It's going to take you an hour and change in an Uber. And in an Uber is $40 one way.
One
way. What I'm saying? So $40, then and I've had days where I was in New York, and I'm not a rich person. I'm a documentary filmmaker, and you know what I mean? Like I doing okay, but $100 in a day on Ubers, $125 in a day. I can't afford. That's crazy.
Who can afford that? That's my question,
but
right?
But if you try to take the bus, it doesn't show up for 25 minutes. You don't know if it's going to show up for an hour.
That's right. And that's the problem. And that's one of the the problems that I intend to adjust, to fix with the help of, a bigger movement than myself. I really think that has been an issue in the past. And I believe with a political will, that we can have a system that's dependable, a system where we can use technology for people to be able to see, oh, here's my bus. Sort of this in the same same fashion that Uber and Lyft use, right? That technology is obviously there, and I'd like to be able to implement that in the transit system that we have here in the Bay Area.
So as far as the Black Lives Matter movement that's happening right now, so much is happening. Milwaukee Bucks saying we're not going to play the playoffs. Unbelievable. These incredible protests that have been going on hundreds of days now, which I have seen and been a part of, and have been so moved by the fact that people in the beginning of those days, back in early June, they were risking their lives. They didn't know if they were going to get the coronavirus from going to the protest, but it was too much to take anymore. As we say we want to defund or reallocate money from the police or abolish the police, is transit some of the place where that money should go?
Absolutely, absolutely. In fact, here in California, there's going to be a ballot measure that addresses that. And it'll be Prop 15, and I support Prop 15, which is going to be this measure in California. And this is going to raise property taxes on corporations to fund schools and other public services, including transit. So when we talk about defunding the police, we're talking about reinvesting those funds into public goods like the transportation system, our public transportation system. That's where the money should be reallocated away from, the massive, overly plump, for lack of a better word, of these police budgets. In Richmond right now, part of the budget, they want to allocate about $80 million into building a new police department, a building, $80 million. Can you imagine?
For a building.
For a building. And the building they're currently in is nice. It's
They already have a nice building.
They already have a nice building. Why do we need to put more money, insert more money into a building when you have people are struggling to eat, struggling to get the education that they need, struggling to get to medical appointments? It's ridiculous. And I believe that's why I strongly support defunding the police and reallocating, reinvesting more of that money into public goods.
Ivanka, Sarah Iannarone, who's a candidate for mayor in Portland, came on, and she was talking about not only a Green New Deal for Portland, and doing a lot of some of the things that you're advocating for as well, but she asked a basic fundamental question. She said, what are cities for? Are cities places where we create culture, where we rejoice, where we celebrate, where we have diversity, where we have a living, breathing mosaic of people? Or are cities extraction zones for major corporations to drain as much money out of the workforce as we possibly can? Do you feel that a building block of what are cities for, first of all, what are cities for in your opinion, but do you feel that this idea of public transit, the public good, the common good, is a fundamental part of that? Talk a little bit about what you think cities are for. I thought that was a radical notion.
That's what cities are for. That's why people are elected or should be elected to do, is to focus on the good and resources that increases the quality of life for its residents. As a Richmond City Council member, that was my focus. We have a huge refinery here in Richmond, the Chevron.
Oh, right.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've seen it. It's a mess.
Right. And so, it was my responsibility. It was my duty as an elected official in my city to protect the residents. It was not my responsibility to increase the bottom line of this corporation or any other corporation. It's our duty to ensure that our residents have the resources that they need to thrive. And so that's what cities are for. That's what government is supposed to be for. A government is not supposed to create laws that increase the bottom line of corporations or their wealthy donors. Government is supposed to be there to ensure that people have places to live, safe environments, food, shelter, education, and quality healthcare. And so I agree with her 100%. And that's why we need more elected officials like her whose number one priority is increasing the quality of life for its residents, and not just increasing the quality of life for the very wealthy few.
Talk about the fight against Chevron. As for me, the fight against fossil fuels has become, a lifelong mission, and it's very hard to do. But it's also one of the fights that's often winnable when you have people really saying, we're not going to be poisoned by your flares. We're not going to be poisoned in our backyards. Talk about the impacts of the Chevron facility and what your role was there.
Yeah.
But first I have to say, you're tuned into Staying Home. I'm Josh Fox. We'll be right back. You're watching Staying Home, your revolutionary guide to the Green New Deal. This is Josh Fox. My guest is Jovanka Beckles. We're talking, she's running for transit board in San Francisco area, but we're also talking about the environmental impacts and environmental racism, environmental injustice. Talk about your fight against Chevron in Richmond, in California.
That fight against Chevron was momentous because when you have this multi-billion-dollar corporation spewing its toxic, pollution in our air, it's not an easy fight. But when we come together, sort of like the African proverb that says, when spider webs unite, it can tie up a lion, and that's what we did in Richmond. We united as a community. And we made sure that not only did this multi-billion-dollar corporation pay its fair share of taxes, but we also fought and really won to demanding that it reduce its pollution in the air. Now, Richmond is majority of color, Black and brown community. And so we know that these kinds of corporations always, in essence, set up shop, in these in communities of color. And so the majority of children that I work with, I continue to work with, have asthma. Our senior members of this community suffer from breathing issues and lung issues as well. And so that fight wasn't easy. And so, and one of the things that I'm really, really proud of is when we came together, I believe it's in 2014, Chevron inserted $3 million into the election in order to help put politicians in office that would do their bidding, that would ensure that they didn't have to pay their fair share of taxes, and with a groundswell of volunteers and passionate community members, we were able to defeat $3 million of Chevron's money. And we won a majority on the Richmond City Council. But that's what anyone can do. That can happen anywhere when we say enough is enough. All right, we're tired. We're tired of you killing our children. We're tired of you killing our elders, our seniors with your toxic smoke and emissions, and we're going to do something about it. And it continues to be a fight. We know the fossil fuel industry, they don't give up easy. They have lots and lots of money with which to work, but when we come together, we can make those demands, and we won. We beat this company. We were able to get $100 million from them in taxes, to which we put into different community resources, bicycle shops, and our libraries, and just different kinds of resources for our children and families. And so that's what happens when we fight back. We don't have to just sit back and just be defeated. We can stand up, we can come together, and we can get those demands that we're fighting for. And the Chevron fight in Richmond is a wonderful example of how that can be done.
And of how you were a big part of organizing that victorious that victorious campaign. It's interesting because when we talk about environmental racism and environmental injustice in America, there's so many white people, white communities that just don't get it because they're not exposed to it. They're not there in the midst of it, right? And I think what was interesting about fracking was it was a different sort of thing because there were a lot of white affluent people that fracking was going to happen in their backyards in upstate New York or in Fort Worth, Texas, and they were being treated traditionally like Black and brown communities have been treated, and they all of a sudden sort of had this waking up moment that there was this injustice. Similarly, right now, we're seeing a lot of white people who don't understand how police brutality works starting to wake up to that phenomenon. What is your message for communities that are ignorant to these injustices, that need to wake up to understand environmental racism in the same way that they need to understand police brutality? What is your message there?
Right. I think that when it comes close to home is when people actually start to understand what Black folk have been faced with, when Black and brown people have been faced with regard to, as you mentioned, environmental racism and police brutality. When it starts to happen, we've seen videos of white allies. So these are white kids who are being beaten by cops and pushed and shot at, and it's unfortunate that has to happen in order for those who've been asleep, those white folk who've been asleep for all this time, to actually begin to see what police brutality is and feels. And so these things only happen when it comes close to home, unfortunately. And the same thing with fracking, when folks when it's close to home and they start to feel the effects of global warming, which we're seeing now. California, there are about 400 fires happening right now. I can look outside and it's smoky right now. We've been having really awful air quality.
I've seen some of the unbelievable pictures friends of mine have been sending me, and the sky is just red.
Yes.
From the smoke and the fires. It's just devastating. Go ahead, sorry.
It absolutely is devastating. And unfortunately, sometimes that's what it takes, to wake people up, to see that, global warming is real, and it's going to affect you. It's not only going to affect communities of color, but it will affect, your very comfortable, white life. And that's why we have to come together and do something about it. I give props to our governor who's doing some things, but at the same time, we demand that we end fracking altogether in California, and that continues to be a fight that we're engaged in right now.
Well, I mean, obviously, it is not the Black community's responsibility or obligation to educate the white community, but it is a moment right now. I think your point is very well taken. Climate change has to be a wake up call for all communities, but that there is, I think, a degree of environmental reparations or the Green New Deal is really focused on justice for frontline communities. And as a person in a frontline community myself, in a number of different ways, for the fracking fight, of course, in the beginning, what does justice look like to you as a person in a frontline community, fighting against the oil industry, fighting for a Green New Deal? This is a very, very fantastic and difficult concept to think about and define. So I often want to try to give people a chance to express, what does justice look like to you as a member of a frontline community?
Yes.
What is that dream of a more just world?
A more just society looks like this to me. We're respected as human beings, as Black folk. Justice to me looks like we transition away from fossil fuel that's contributing to global warming, and a just transition for its workers. Justice for me looks like, people are able to move about freely and get from their jobs to home and vice versa to their medical appointments and such. Justice to me means that we have good paying jobs in every sector of society, and workers are paid what they're deserved, and given the respect, given the safety equipment that they need. Justice for me looks like, we can go outside and breathe clean air and have clean water to drink, and it looks like in so many ways looks like us transitioning away from private prisons and giving people opportunities, a second chance, by providing and offering employment to those who are coming back from incarceration. Where I could go on and on, just that, and that's what.
Well, unfortunately, there's so many injustices to address. But sorry, I don't mean to cut you off there. I like it when you go on and on. I was just sitting there dreaming with you right there.
Yes, I love dreaming. I'm a dreamer. And I think that so much of the things that I dream of, that you dream of, that are many of us dream of, is doable. Justice means that that everyone has an opportunity to be housed. Justice looks like everyone should have the opportunity at quality education and quality health care. And all these things, although they're dreams, they're doable. They're doable in the richest country in the world, and here in California, in the richest economy in the world. So, as I said, we could go on and on, can't we?
You're tuned in to Staying Home. This is Josh Fox. We'll be right back. You're tuned in to Staying Home, your revolutionary guide to the Green New Deal. I am Josh Fox. My guest is Jovanka Beckles. It's so amazing to me that so many of these problems come down to just the fundamental inequalities that exist right now in economics, racial inequalities, environmental inequalities. The call is often to privatize. And as you pointed out, so I think astutely, Uber and Lyft are privatizations already of a public transit system that's on its last legs. But is there even more? Is there a call to privatize the system even more?
Yeah, well, exactly. And there is. And I want to just put a plug in for our listeners to vote no on Prop 22. Have you heard about Prop 22? Just because right now that's the fight that will be on the ballot. And really, if Uber and Lyft are allowed to, they in essence.
What is Prop 22?
They wrote the ballot, well, it's Prop 22 would enable Uber and Lyft to keep to continue to abuse their riders by keeping them as contract workers.
Oh.
So they wouldn't have sick leave and vacation
right.
And so we want to vote against that, because if they succeed, it's going to be on. It's going to be on, because now that would just we would see that rolling over into other jobs that where people would now start to everything will be up for contract. It would in essence be the end of unions. Workers will have no rights if this passes. And so we really have got to show that this is not the future. This is not a sustainable model. So I got so carried into that, I forgot what you asked me, Josh. But
no, that's what we were talking about, privatization and Prop 22.
Right.
Just as a last minute, we have 2 minutes left. Just talk a little bit about the journey from being an activist to now running for office. And that we're going to have to leave it there, even though it's been such an enjoyable and inspiring conversation. Talk about that journey for yourself, and do you hope to inspire other people to do the same?
I do. I hope to inspire other people because it's really the way that we are going to make a difference. There are so many different ways of making a difference. We can sit at home and we can send emails and make phone calls. We can get out on the streets and demand and make demands, and we can run for office, right? And we can run for office, and we can win by uniting. And when we win, and when we're in these political offices, we can then create the kinds of policies that we're in the streets demanding. Right. And so that's why I encourage everyone, particularly working people, particularly women, and particularly Black women, more women of color, I believe, need to run for office, because we know that we experience these injustices every single day of our lives. And so we understand what it's going to take, the types of policies it's going to take to bring about the justice that we're fighting for on the streets. And I also want to say nicely, Josh, if I may, that once again, no one's going to give it to us. power doesn't, conceits of nothing, right? Except demand, right? And I'm saying that all kind of messed up, but they're not going to give it to us for free. A fair free system isn't going to be given us to us for free. Good transit jobs isn't going to be given us for free. So we know the rich aren't going to pay their fair taxes without a fight. And so we have to elect good people, and only good people in these offices can do that. We're going to face huge pressures as an activist moving into political positions from those corporations who want to keep making massive profit at our expense, but we can do it. And I encourage everyone who's thinking about running for office, who are revolutionaries, to do so. And let's be that change that we are fighting for.
Thank you, Jovanka Beckel, so much, running for transit board in California, for a very inspiring conversation, wide-ranging conversation about the whole idea of public transportation. Extremely important, right? We want to talk about fires, we want to talk about things exploding. It's maybe not so sexy, but very inspiring to talk about. We just have a right to get to and fro without having to pay hundreds of dollars to Uber and Lyft, who are also abusing their employees. Thank you so much for being on with us and reminding us how important it is that activists run for office.
Right. Only we can do it by building a movement for working people. We can do it. We can fight for racial justice, economic and environmental justice when we build a working class movement.
Thank you. All right. Well, good luck. Keep us posted as to what happens, and keep us posted as to the plans, because we want to know the future dream that you're talking about and how it starts to take place. So thanks, Jovanka, for being on. You've been tuned in to Staying Home, your revolutionary guide to the Green New Deal. I'm Josh Fox. I'm going to take a moment at the end of this episode just to talk a little bit about where we're at. A Green New Deal, as Jovanka says, at the local level, is extraordinarily important. I mean, obviously, the Green New Deal is something that has to take place at every level of society. It has to take place at our individual level, at our town level, at our county level, at our state level, at our national level, at our continent level, and at our global level. So we have to focus on this in the arena in which we have some opportunity and in which we are called. And I love this one slogan from the Sunrise Movement. You happen to be alive at the right moment to change everything. It is an astounding notion. And right now, there is a thread of defeatism that I really, really worry about a lot. A thread of defeatism from particularly the left, the progressive left, where I come from, right? That we have people who are saying, oh, well, Bernie's not the nominee, so I'm going to throw in the towel. I'm just going to leave. Now, I want you to take a look at, and a lot of the programming for this coming weeks is about not doing that, about not calling yourself into that sort of resignation moment, that moment of fear, that moment of I don't know, I guess of just checking out, right? Because right now you're alive at the moment to change everything. And that electoral politics is a small part of that, but it's also a huge part of that right now. We're going to look at some of these fires. Look at the footage and the pictures of these fires in California. It is truly apocalyptic. Ken Klippenstein, who was on this program, said, we're at the stage of climate change where California's skies turn red or orange every single year at the same time. And another person said, the sky is the color of Trump's skin. It's really insane. I was in Paradise, California, with a family who were fleeing the fires, who had a child under either an infant, two young boys, cats, dogs, literally running for their lives. I was with firefighters in Colorado who were fighting the Hyde Park fire about 8 years ago, who said trees were literally exploding with fire. Exploding trees, and the fire was advancing at 35 miles an hour, and they had to try to outrun it. The firefighters. Another friend from LA today talking about how she wanted to step outside in a hazmat suit, not just because she was COVID all around her neighborhood, which is true, but also because the air is so dense, it smells like something is on fire everywhere you go in California right now. I'm going to show you a few videos and pictures of my friend Marco Krapels, who is in San Francisco, outside in the Bay Area, writing the word ash on the hood of his car that you can see.
Whoever doesn't take climate change seriously should read these letters, written in ash, because this is what we're breathing right now in California.
What does it really mean to actually process the idea of an extinction level event? Everything on Earth gone. Everything on Earth gone. That is what we're staring at. That is what we're looking at. That's what climate change is saying. It is not about, the finer points of which policy position it made you upset and want to stay home. We don't stay home. We go out and vote. Right now, Joe Biden has a $2 trillion plan out there to address climate change. $2 trillion to address climate change. That's the first and biggest stroke of any president or any government in the United States. And Donald Trump just wants to watch the world burn. These are just the facts. And if we're not actually looking at the facts, we're not going to actually know what to do. So even though there are people out there who are saying, stay home, vote third party, don't do anything, Dr. Cornel West is saying, go vote for Joe Biden. Bob Avakian of the perennial third party communist is saying, go vote for Joe Biden. Susan Sarandon is saying, go vote for Joe Biden. Get us out of this fix, out of this fascism. But I'll have to tell you this from my perspective. We have 10 years to change everything on Earth. We can't give 4 of those years to Donald Trump. We have to keep pressing on. We have to have faith in ourselves that we can change these things. We have to have faith that a Green New Deal will start and ripple across the country. I've seen it happen. From this place where people didn't even know about fracking to the notion of a vice presidential candidate who stands for banning fracking, and that's just 10 years later. So we actually have to make sure, really, really, really sure that we stay engaged. We are alive at the moment to change everything. And some of that's electoral politics, but I'll tell you something, if we don't get the electoral politics right this time around, all the rest of our work will not matter. All the rest of our work will not have a chance. I can organize during a Biden administration. We can do that. During a Trump administration, they're going to put our names on lists and round us up. They're threatening to do it already to Black Lives Matter. They're going to do it to every last one of us. There is no way to rationalize sitting this election in any way. Please, we must mobilize. We're alive at the right moment to change everything. And I want you to think about that and get motivated. So please participate, get out there, get going, make a plan to vote, make a plan to get this situation turned around. It's not just us in the United States. It's the whole ball of wax. It's the whole world. It's the whole world. Thanks so much. This is Staying Home, your revolutionary guide to the Green New Deal. Let's make sure we make a Green New Deal. See you tomorrow.
Are you a politician with a ridiculous point to make? Are you in need of a petulant, outdated way to make it? Then you'll need one of my signs. Hi, I'm Simon Simonson of Simonson Signs. We'll take the stupid, over-the-top, meaningless allegory you have and put it on foam core. So maybe someone will notice your grandstanding. Because this is C-SPAN, and anything that's not people milling around in front of a running vote count is almost considered moderately entertaining. The bar is low, just like our prices. We've got plenty of designs. We also brought you Mike Lee's Tauntauns. They're tons of fun. What does this have to do with the Green New Deal? About as much as this other visual aid he used of Reagan on a T-Rex. Or is that a velociraptor? Who cares? Who the cares? No one gives a Call us now at Simonson Signs. We'll make your stupid point stupidly for money today.
Viewers had asked for an interview with the TYT Lizard. Mr. Lizard. Lizard. Oh, you changed colors today. Nice. I don't even know how you feel about us. Do you even like us?
Well, you guys made me this awesome house, so I'm kind of in your debt. I was found outside on the street, and you gave me a home. Granted, it was a really crappy home for a while, but then through the power of fundraising, I became a person who has a multi-level Trump-style mansion.
You do. By the way, you've never looked better, man. Normally, you're just green or just brown, but today you're in mid-lizard, right?
I'm not very smart. I'm a lizard, so I don't know how the science works. I guess this is just my mood. It's not every day that thresholds like this are broken. I'm just so excited. I can't contain my pigmentation.
And now you're showing it off.
Yep.
Yeah, I've never seen the lizard like this before.
That 300 million is a pretty good number, we were doing a press release on it, and I got all worked up. And I said, okay, well, that's the size of the U.S. population. You know what our next target is? The size of the entire world on the road to 6 billion. Although by the time we hit it, it'll probably be 7, maybe 8 billion.
Not a big deal. A couple of days ago on the TYT network, we passed 1 billion views.
What the hell?
What the hell?
That's a big freaking deal.
2 billion views.
What now?
Sorry.
What did we do? 2 billion?
2 billion.
They said it couldn't be done, but it was done.
We just crossed 5 billion views on YouTube.
I mean, imagine 10 years ago thinking, one day.
We looked at you like, are you nuts? Young Turks crosses 6 billion views. Young Turks has just passed another milestone, 10 billion views.
Damn.
I just shot a clip. It's time sensitive and it needs to be edited right
now. Did anybody call for an editor?
Need this in an hour.
But you're an editor too.
Welcome to the conversation on the TYT network. Well, we've got a real interesting interview for you guys today because this is about something that has happened to a lot of progressive campaigns. Scandalous charges that then fall apart. It appears to be a common tactic. We're bringing on Shahid Buttar running against Nancy Pelosi. He has gone through something similar. We also want to talk about his campaign, of course. Shahid, welcome back to the Young Turks.
Thanks for having me, Cenk. It's great to be with you.
No problem. So there was two sets of charges against you. One appears to be completely discredited from a person who has told similar stories about completely different people. So I don't want to spend too much time on that. I want to talk about some of your campaign staffers who came out against you and how DSA in Northern California reacted to that. Look, for folks who don't know, Shahid's clearly the progressive challenger to Nancy Pelosi. He won the primary. So he got into the general election in California. Two Democrats can be in the general election, and they are. So Shahid, let's start with what the charges were, and then we'll break them down.
So it actually was half a dozen different allegations that my former staff, who I replaced after I won the primary, have brought forward. And the story has shifted every week or two. First, it was a claim that I was inappropriate with my volunteers. That fell apart immediately. Then it was the claim that you mentioned by the person in Washington who had accused me of acts, including murder and human trafficking, long before the more recent harassment charge that my former colleagues used to bring their complaints about my campaign strategy into the press. They've since then alleged that I don't work hard, that I'm paid too much. They've outed my relationships. There's been a whole series of expanding accusations. Most recently, they've been claiming online that I was at an event that I wasn't part of, that The Guardian wrote about and also accused me of being at that I wasn't. So there's sort of a sustained misinformation campaign promoted by basically people who I worked really hard to create opportunities for, and who ultimately, chose to align themselves with the city's progressive establishment instead.
What is it that they accuse you of? And then tell us your side of the story.
The one thing they've accused me of that I can't disprove just because it's rooted in their experience is toxic misogyny in the workplace. And I have acknowledged that people have their own experiences, and I'm not going to claim to refute anyone's experience. That would, be, I think, frankly, a reflection of the thing they accused me of. And so I acknowledge everyone's experience, and I apologize. I have apologized. I'll do it again for any gendered experience that anyone had on my team. Several people have come forward, people who are closer to the campaign than several of my former staff, people who spent more time in the office, people who spent more time on the campaign, and they've affirmed, while being silenced by the press, that what they observed when I worked with this team was not misogyny, but rather my challenges trying to get a recalcitrant staff to follow campaign direction. And I think some people have a challenge differentiating between conflict and abuse. And this was, a set of folks, a handful of folks who found their way off the team in the weeks following the primary. No two of them left. Only two of them, I should say, left at the same time, and they presented their concerns in the press as if a dozen people had left at once. That was flatly inaccurate. There's a whole range of inaccuracies, but the allegation of toxic misogyny, I think, roots in their experience. They claim that I berated people, and I certainly never, the only time I would have ever raised my voice was one particular meeting where they disregarded my agenda and had sort of tried to organize all of my closest advisors to wall me off from parts of the campaign so that my staff could run the campaign in their own way. And that didn't go so well. And it was not long after that that they found their way to other opportunities. But I wasn't the character they depicted. I'll say that, and I haven't been, and I'm not.
So Shahid, let's get into the details, because I think without getting into the details, people then go, I don't know, was it misogynistic or not? Like, so what was the context of the disagreement, the substantive disagreement? Yeah. What did they want you to do with your campaign, and what did you want to do with your campaign?
One example here, so the money I'd raised at the time when I hired the staff that I had in the primary phase, their goal and their attitude was that we should spend it all on paid canvassers, and that paid canvassers on the phone and knocking on doors would be the way to win the election. And my response was throughout, that we can't pay enough people to knock on every door in the city. And the way you get the scale necessary to win a race against the Speaker of the House is to attract an army of people, volunteers, and have the staff coordinate the campaign so that the volunteers are the ones executing it. And my campaign staff had come to my campaign having worked only on local campaigns. My former campaign manager, who's been very active in promoting these smears, had come to my campaign having been a canvassing director for a mayoral candidate. And their vision of campaigns was strictly local. So, the parts of the campaign beyond the city, for instance, the kind of conversation we're having now, this was outside their experience. And the idea of investing in communications outreach, in press outreach, in the infrastructural parts of the campaign was not something they frankly understood. I did all the policy development alone. I had a hard time getting support really for anything, even mobilizing volunteers for events that I'd go to. I often had to do that on my own. And it's just a matter of the staff having their own priorities and frankly not supporting mine. And that's why I found my way to staff who I work with now. And since we made that transition in the months after the primary several months ago, we frankly accelerated dramatically. I think one reason for that is that the colleagues I recruited later, these are generally folks who joined us after having worked on Bernie's presidential campaign. They're more experienced, they're more committed, they're certainly more loyal. And I think that's demonstrated itself in the results of the campaign attained since.
It appears to me that it was disagreement over tactics that they then weaponized to smear you as someone who didn't disagree with them based on substance, but disagreed with them because of who they are. And on the surface, to me, everybody can make up their own mind. That's absurd. So are you never allowed to disagree with anyone? And how do we get into identity politics battles like that? So if you and I were to disagree, Shad, I'm from a Muslim background. You're South Asian. I'm Middle Eastern. Who wins? Like, I mean, so if we disagree, is it by definition that you're oppressing me or I'm oppressing you?
That's the issues here precisely is the extrapolation of individual experience as if to indicate a pattern, as if, just to be clear, I hadn't worked in nonprofits and any number of places over the last 20 years. I've worked with lots of women. And none of them have frankly had an experience of the sort that my former colleagues report, including the women who work with me now. The press reports about these accusations were so flatly irresponsible, really reducing journalism to stenography. I mean, people didn't check their facts. There were obvious, even internal inconsistencies in the first round of press reports. One of my former colleagues, this is one of my favorite moments in this whole saga, is quoted saying that it took 3 or 4 men to convince me to agree with the perspective that a woman had offered on the team. We didn't have 3 or 4 men on the campaign team, but the lie was so obvious if anybody just bothered to check their facts. But not a single journalist, the San Francisco Chronicle twice ran stories quoting someone experienced by other people who they have targeted as a predator, and not once covering the actual facts here. And it frankly took over a month for the documentary evidence to be covered by the press. And the documentary evidence proves that my former colleagues were promoting a narrative that they knew to be false. They wrote a resolution for DSASF predicated entirely on an alleged pattern of inappropriate behavior that never existed. There was no such pattern. My former finance director invented a set of rumors. And several people came forward after they had been recruited by my staff to back up these lies. And those people who came forward were ignored by the press. And it took a while for that to come out. In fact, just today, for the first time, Sam Sater on the Majority Report said the name for the first time. Gloria Berry is an elected member of the Democratic County Central Committee here. We met because about 1.5 years ago, and she's now elected to that body because a former member of it, mayoral candidate Angela Alioto, in a meeting dropped the N-word 6 times within 30 seconds. And we were both on our feet saying, you have to stop saying this. And I've seen the very same pattern of disregard for racial inclusion demonstrated even in the organized left in San Francisco. Groups, several political organizations just presuming judgment, in some cases affirmatively excluding witnesses and evidence in order to race to judgment. And it's one thing for unethical press statements to amplify accusations. It's another thing for a political club to race to judgment. But when the objects of those judgments are people of color who are falsely accused. The race to judgment and the unethical press reporting, or the failure to correct the reports when the evidence emerges, all that attains far worse dimensions that I am very disappointed to see in the city that I know and love and aim to represent.
By the way, this is very similar to what happened to Alex Morse in Massachusetts. And there, the charges, once they were debunked, were more clearly seen as homophobic, which is what they were to begin with.
His campaign, right? I mean, you can correct a smear, but once the smear is out of the bottle, it does enormous damage, and not just to its targets, right? It wasn't just Alex who was harmed. It's not just me who's harmed. The movement has been harmed, and I think that that's a principle, not just a movement. Frankly, all the movements. You know, the Me Too movement was harmed by this. The socialist movement was harmed by this. The movement for a Green New Deal was harmed by this. Literally, no one was served. I think my former staff might have thought that they would benefit from this somehow, but I don't think anybody will. And I think it's just very unfortunate that people would resort to concocting false narratives. I don't think that any time we stray from the truth, we abandon any pretense of doing anything helpful.
We're very honest that we're progressives. We call the Young Turks home of progressives, and we support progressive candidates.
There has been this reemergence of political activism, especially among young people.
This weekend was the second Women's March, both across the US and across the world. So these people are not simply marching, they're not simply talking, they're also running for office. And when they do run, they're gonna make a difference.
Joe Crowley is congressman from New York. He's very powerful. Why? He raised a lot of money. But there's someone finally challenging him.
We need to have representation that advocates as fiercely for working class people as possible from this seat.
If candidates like Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez even get a little bit of media attention outside of what the Young Turks does, they have an excellent chance of winning.
She's gonna win. She's gonna win.
68% reporting.
The majority of Americans want Medicare for all. So I don't care what you and your corporate cronies want. What I care about is what the American people want.
We believe in total change. Everything runs on donor money. And that is what we will fight, and that is exactly why they don't like us.
We're having fun. It's election night.
Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez has defeated Joe Crowley.
Here we go again.
Ladies and gentlemen, we got him.
Down goes Crowley. Down goes Crowley. Down goes Manafort. Down goes Cohen. Women came out in record numbers in the primaries. They said you'll be lucky to get one candidate. We now have 12 that have won their primaries. Bezos and Amazon announcing that they are going to go to a 15-hour minimum wage.
We're making progress. Let's keep going.
Many of these women made history.
The biggest victories, all women of color. Rashida Tlaib and Ilhan Omar, Sharice Davids and Deb Haaland.
And I want to go to Congress because I want to change those things.
I'm calling it. Jamal Bowman has won. Down goes Engel. Down goes Engel.
For a long time, we have not had progressives in power. It's going to be something to behold.
Welcome to the Happy Hour, everybody. After a week of soul-crushing news, we break out the good stuff. Good news, good videos, good people, and of course, drink good alcohol. That's the worst thing I've ever had.
This is the best show.
Full disclosure, we did do a shot right before the show began. It says, let's flamingo.
Flamingo.
The reason you had trouble with that word is it's not a word.
Okay.
This is the one of everything.
I've got a rash. Could I just put it on that to see if it'll take it off?
What did you used to think this was?
Bull piss.
Drink it, swallow it,
No.
spit it. Oh, that's needed after a day like this.
Cheers to Brett Ehrlich.
Climax. Uranus smells like farts. Because of course it does. This is the worst sketch ever of a perp. But guess what, ladies and gentlemen? They found the guy. This is Sophie's super happy dog story of the week.
This dog is so precious and deserves the world. I'm just not drinking that beer.
Here's my dog. This is Onyx.
Yeah, I would just say that he's exotic because he's not your traditional dog. Still 12 out of 10 because they're all good.
Well, if that made you happy, just wait till you see the best thing ever of the week. There is a woman who moves like a horse.
Why do I want to go home and like try this?
We're actually gonna show you the running butthole challenge right now. What's happening?
No, that's just wrong.
Every way. And we'll see you next time.
Hey Dave, as you can probably see, Skype froze. Frozen crashed.
You know, I'm watching that documentary on the Vietnam War, and
There was a TV journalist in the middle of some tiny little village in Vietnam doing live TV as the soldiers were burning the Vietnamese huts. And it didn't crash. And that was
That's a good point.
1965, and he was in Vietnam.
So, Shad, what did the Humanist Report uncover?
A set of texts, particularly between one of my former colleagues, a white man, and one of my volunteers, a white woman, in which my former colleague was suggesting that I had done something inappropriate. And just to give the story here, there's a bar in San Francisco called El Rio. We had an event there. I think this might have been January of 2020, so a few months before the primary. And two of my supporters were there, one of whom had done some really clever things using magnets to hang banners and signs in outdoor public locations, banner drops, basically leveraging magnets. And the other volunteer was really intrigued to hear this, said, oh, I'd like to join you for one of these banner dropping actions. And so my colleague, my finance director, was there. And so I said to my finance director, would you please introduce this volunteer to that volunteer? And for whatever reason, she was reticent, declined. I guess we talked about it several times that night. The rumor that she spread is that I had badgered her that night to get the number of this volunteer so I could give it to a donor, so I could hook up sexually the volunteer with the donor so that I could look like the man. That was the rumor. And it's written in writing. It appears in a resolution, a DSA resolution that was quoted by The Intercept, even though the person at the center of the narrative, the woman with who I was supposedly trying to hook up with my donor, allegedly, according to my former staff person who now works for Grand New Congress, that rumor was debunked by the person in it. She came forward and said she was disgusted by seeing the press reports. She says in the text messages where my former colleagues are trying to recruit her, this is sick. I'm not going to participate in your smear campaign. And it was after that all these press reports emerged. After that my former colleagues start claiming in DSA that I have this supposed pattern, which I don't. I haven't harassed anyone. I certainly never assaulted anyone. Members of my former staff claimed that I had assaulted people. They claimed this in writing, even beyond the accusations that they themselves had contrived. And they've since scrubbed their posts to remove all the references to assault. But it just is part of this consistent pattern of shifting accusation. And the fact that the accusations keep shifting, in my mind, is reflective of how relatively credible or not they are.
What's the current status of the DSA there? Are they still continuing with this nonsense? And if they are, given the text, given the clear evidence here, what do you think their motivation is?
You know, the DSA has taken itself off the table. It did rescind its endorsement. Gloria Berry, the volunteer I mentioned who my former colleagues had recruited and come forward to share her experience, she was so frankly triggered by one of the DSA meetings. She wrote publicly afterward that she felt like she'd been at a KKK meeting. And just to be clear, I mean, the things that have been said about me in those spaces have been vicious, beyond slanders, amplifying and extending the accusations well beyond. I mean, the accusations themselves are based on fabrication, and at every point in the discussion, someone in DSA amplified and extended them into new zones of supposed patterns. It was incredibly offensive and frankly racist. And it was very disappointing. The only organization in the city that actually investigated the accusations chose to stand by me, and that was the SF Berniecrats. Their membership voted not to rescind their endorsement before the leadership, which had frankly come out against me. They then sort of changed the process and reintroduced a new motion. So the club ultimately has recommended me while stepping back from its position endorsing me. But every other organization in the city, Progressive Democrats of America, the San Francisco Tenants Union, DSA chapters, both here and in Silicon Valley, every single one of them, privileged accusation over fact, guilt before innocence, and unfortunately here ducked into the punch of some really gnarly dynamics unfolding around our society and not choosing to look skeptically at accusations even when they targeted a person of color. I'm an immigrant, I'm a brown man, I have a beard, I'm Muslim. There's a trope very well established in our society that Muslim men are supposedly misogynist. And I'm not gonna say that there aren't any, but it's not me. And the facts certainly don't fit. And I would just ask to be judged on the content of my character and my actions instead of on the basis of accusations contrived by people with a political interest in fabricating this narrative.
Oh, Shad, let's give your websites here but I'm going to give you my theory, and I'm curious what you think. But what's the website, Shad, that people can go to?
Shahidforchange.us.
Shahidforchange.us. Okay, and we'll put the link in the description box below. So, and now more than ever, you're going to need donations of volunteers to help fight against the actual political opponent, who's Nancy Pelosi, the corporate Democrat that has barely fought Donald Trump at all and has been completely ineffectual and fights against every progressive priority. So I'm going to get to that in a second, but look, my sense of what's happening in some parts of the left is twofold. One is, honestly, this is my opinion, young people who feel tremendously entitled, that if they're not immediately in charge of all decision making, that it's discrimination against them. And then secondly, a certain portion of the left who relishes a false sense of moral superiority, and any opportunity that they have to try to establish that at the expense of the movement, of character assassinations of good people, and actually trying to effectuate change, they'll take it for their own selfish purposes. I'm saying that broadly, and I'm saying that that's my opinion. I'm curious what your experience is in this case, if either of those things apply.
It certainly is the case that my former staff felt a great deal of entitlement, tremendous amounts of entitlement. I mean, I put up with things that I don't think any candidate would. I found myself needing to debate people on my team about my own message, people who were wildly presumptuous about their own roles on the campaign. And beyond that sense of entitlement, when you were describing the dynamic around the easier opportunity to tear down than to build, I think that cancel culture can seem very, it's an easier alternative than to actually building power and shifting the material outcomes facing working people struggling with our compounding civilizational crises. I think it can be challenging to build power, and I think it's a lot easier to tear someone down. And just to be clear, I am all for accountability. I'm an agent of accountability. I'm running for office to hold a bunch of people accountable. I would welcome being held accountable for anything that I do. But I don't think it makes sense to try to hold people accountable for things that they haven't done. And inventing things in the service of dragging people down, I have a hard time of understanding, how that serves the left or how that serves any movement. I can see how it might serve individuals, but I think that even that notion, it reflects the very same inexperience and myopia that I think, frankly, limited how my former staff were able to contribute to our campaign. And among the reasons why I'm so grateful to work with the more experienced, focused, committed, loyal people that I work with now.
So I've got to ask at least one policy question. California is burning. And look, your case is, the reason we focus so much on the charges is because it's not just about you, honestly. It's about the whole movement. This is happening all across the country to almost every progressive candidate. And any progressive who participates when it is baseless charges like this, I think is massively counterproductive. And so people have to recognize the pattern here and combat it effectively and in enough time. But right now, California is burning. What is your plan versus Nancy Pelosi's plan to combat it?
The very beginning is the Green New Deal. That's a no-brainer. It's an industrial transformation. It's commitment to renewable energy. It would include the federal jobs guarantee that would actually enable the replication of long abandoned indigenous wildfire management techniques, labor-intensive work that the market can't incentivize. That's a big part of the recipe. Another part that, frankly, too many climate justice activists and organizations take their eye off the ball of is restraining our military industrial complex. I say this for two reasons. The Pentagon is our planet's largest institutional source of carbon pollution, and it's also recognized climate catastrophe as a national security threat. And separate from that, what we use it for tends to be resource wars, wars for plunder, often fossil fuels, exacerbating and accelerating the climate crisis. So if we want to get in front of this predictable, recurring, and frankly, not entirely, but at least not entirely preventable, but at least mitigatable disaster, we have to make the hard decisions to put capital behind instead of in front of our communities. Everyone on the West Coast right now feels it viscerally because we're breathing it. You can feel it in your lungs. It literally hurts. And these are those of us who were lucky enough not to have our homes burned down, lucky enough not to be evacuated. And the people who've lost their homes or been evacuated or in the worst cases lost their lives, they're just a reflection of the failures of our establishment, the long-standing failures of our establishment. And maybe the last thing I'd say here is that there's a conspicuous difference between the position of GOP climate denialists and corporate Democrats who believe in climate delay. At least for the GOP, you could say that they were consistent. I'm not going to excuse their ignorance, but perhaps it's understandable. But the Democrats, like Nancy Pelosi, claim to believe the science, but then proudly declare their unwillingness to do anything about it. And that's, I think, worse than denial.
All right, Shad for Change.us. Thank you, Shad.
And I love all people, rich or poor. But in those particular positions, I just don't want a poor person. Does that make sense? Does that make sense?
It's going to be a contest between you and Biden. It's going to be a contest between both of you and the virus. The virus is set because it's in real people's lives. You know, all those tens of millions of people who don't have jobs, who don't have that income. Listen, I mean, you and I.
Nothing more could have been done. Nothing more could have been done.
Well,
I acted early.
This will be the history that we start the first draft of, and it will continue. And
So you think the virus totally supersedes the economy?
oh, sure, but they're related, as you know.
A little bit, yeah.
Oh, little bit. I mean,
more than a little bit, but the economy is doing. Look, we're close to a new stock market record. We're not going to own it. I'm not going to own it.
All right, welcome to the Young Turks. Jake Ugranic experience with you guys. Countdown to election. We're under 2 months. Every day is precious. We certainly have news on that, but unfortunately, we also have news about shootings as that continues. So we do have good news for you guys in terms of new programming. We're always trying to provide more for you guys. In this case, it's on Twitch again, Mondays. That's tonight, 7:30 p.m. Eastern. Go to twitch.tv/TYT. That's where you're going to find Rick Strong from TYT Sports, newly married, as we announced on the show a little while back. So we discuss sports and politics, and obviously there's a lot to talk about. There's the only time that the four major sports have ever been playing together at the same time, ironically, and this is in the middle of coronavirus. And so don't miss it every Monday. And he's taking, it's starting September 14th, obviously. He's taking suggestions from you guys on what to cover as well during the stream. All right, and let me just check in on the thermometer. It's the beginning of a new week. And guys, I think there's a lot to be hopeful about. We can do this together. Right now, 44,861. For every year, every month this year, we try to get to $200,000 just this year. And it's, look, just 10% of the money that the right wingers get helps us power past them significantly. So that's you guys beating the right-wing billionaires. I say that number based on PragerU getting $23 million a year in free money from two right-wing billionaires. $2 million from you guys over the course of 10 months. That's less than 10% of what the billionaires give right-wing propaganda. And we kick their ass left and right. And we do it with you guys at tyt.com/go. So we'll check back in on that, see if in the next segment we're past 45,000 or not. Meanwhile, lots of stories. So Anna, let's do it.
All right. Well, we start off with a pretty tragic story out of Los Angeles, but it's making national headlines. So 2 Los Angeles Sheriff's Department deputies were ambushed by a lone shooter at a metro station in Compton Saturday night. Fortunately, both of the cops have survived the shooting, even though both of them were shot in their head. They are in serious yet stable condition and, hoping that they make a full recovery. We don't know too much about the story so far, other than the fact that this ambush happened. The suspect is still out on the loose. We don't even have any specific details identifying what the suspect looks like. The only thing authorities have released is that the suspect is allegedly a male. With that said, we do have video of what happened in this ambush. It's surveillance footage. Let's take a quick look at that. Walking up to the vehicle, the cops are just parked. They were just, patrolling the metro station in Compton, minding their own business, and this ambush happened. Again, I want to emphasize that we don't know anything about the suspect other than what the authorities say, which is that he is a male. Other than that, we don't know what the motive is. A lot of people are already jumping to conclusions, which I get. That's definitely a tempting thing to do, but we have to hold and wait until we know all the details. Now, one of the deputies, only identified as a 31-year-old mother of a 6-year-old boy, was shot in the jaw and arms, but is in critical and stable condition. The other deputy, a 24-year-old man, was struck by gunfire in the forehead and an arm and a hand. He's described as alert. Neither of their names have been released to the public. Both deputies were sworn in only 14 months ago. And, you know, there's a different element to the story that I'll talk about in just a second. It has to do with protests at the hospital. But Cenk, I wanted to give you an opportunity to jump in.
Yeah. So, first of all, the authorities in the latest news pieces say male, black, 28 to 30 years old. So we don't know if that's exactly right. Of course, that's just their first attempt at trying to identify the person. Obviously, there's a reward. A police officer is being shot, $100,000 reward to help find the person. And so in terms of assumptions about who it is, well, okay, based on that description, you can make a couple of assumptions. A lot of times it's right-wingers who shoot police. Great majority of the time the cops are shot in this country, it's by right-wing fundamentalists and militia members, etc. In this case, that is less likely, obviously, with an African-American suspect. There's not a lot of African-Americans in right-wing militia groups. So, and now there's one thing that complicates this. It's in Compton, where the sheriff's department has been accused of having gangs within the sheriff's department by other police. Other police have accused them of that. And so if they're, and God, that doesn't mean that the two people in the car are, first of all, it doesn't mean anybody in that sheriff's department is involved in gang violence or having their own gang. But it is a substantial accusation, and it came up in a court hearing once on a wrongful shooting, and they wound up paying out $7 million in a settlement rather than get into the details of what gangs might exist there. But even if that is all true, it doesn't mean that the two people, police that were involved or had anything to do with it. It might still be random in that sense. But so there are complicating factors here. It's not just a clean-cut case of, somebody just shooting police or somebody shooting left-wingers or right-wingers, et cetera. Now, in terms of what is clean-cut and very obvious, the shooting is immoral under any and all circumstances. Those are two innocent people. 31-year-old woman there has a 6-year-old son, as Anna read to you guys. These two folks, 24 and 31 years old, shot in the forehead, shot in the jaw. Super lucky that they survived. Thank God for that. And so that's crystal clear. Now, the second thing that's clear is this will help in any efforts to reform the police. So if it was in any way, shape, or form, in that person's head at least, in their mind politically connected, well, then it's the most counterproductive thing I've ever seen. It makes police far more likely to shoot quicker because of safety concerns like this one. And it makes repairing the breach much more difficult.
Yeah, definitely. So if the suspect is in any way connected to, the protesters or whatever, yeah, it is absolutely counterproductive, and he should be condemned 100%, no matter what, as you said. I wanted to give a little more context into what you were mentioning earlier, Cenk, about how the Los Angeles Sheriff's Department had very credible allegations of engaging in gang activity themselves. This was a very big story that broke not too long ago, and that is something that complicates the story a little bit. So the Banditos, the 3,000 boys, the Regulators, and the Linwood Vikings are only a few of the estimated 17 gangs that operate in jails and sheriff's stations across the county. Members often have matching tattoos connecting them to the secret groups entrenched at all levels of the department. And so that was a big report. And as you also alluded to, The way that reporters found out about that was there was a sheriff's deputy who actually spoke out against it and tried to raise awareness about it because he thought he was doing the right thing in trying to get, you know, this toxicity out of and this criminality out of the sheriff's department. But he was retaliated against and referred to as a rat. He received a text message referring to him as a rat. And so that is a credible story to keep in mind. One other thing to also keep in mind that I think is incredibly counterproductive is outside of St. Francis Medical Center in Linwood, where the injured officers were being treated Saturday night, a small crowd, including some apparent demonstrators, gathered. Witnesses say members in the group were chanting anti-law enforcement slogans and at one point tried to get inside the hospital. There was a pastor there with, you know, a group of people who was trying to like pray for the officers. And he talked to the press and said that the demonstrators are actually blocking the entrance. So when people were trying to get into the emergency room, it was being obstructed. All of this stuff is just gross. And beyond, I mean, yes, it's counterproductive. I mean, if you care about strategy and actually reforming police, which needs to be done, this is counterproductive. But more importantly, it's just morally wrong. It should be condemned. These are people, okay? I get that right now everything is very politically charged, but that woman has a 6-year-old son at home who's terrified right now. You know, these are people who weren't doing anything wrong. They weren't caught on tape doing anything brutal to anybody. They were sitting in their police vehicle when they were ambushed. What are people doing right now? This is insane. I just don't accept that.
Yeah, so in terms of the gangs within the cops and the sheriff's offices, that's pretty close to fact. The question is, how big a presence is it? Why I say it's not close to fact, it is a fact. One of the sheriff leadership that was fired was part of the Vikings gang. That's tends to be more white supremacists. I know, it's shocking. And the gang that the other officer accused them of being part of is called the Executioners. And that's for police that get tattoos of skulls on their bodies after they execute a member of the public. So if that gang actually exists, that's something that is massive story and should be investigated. But again, those two folks there's 0% evidence the two cops involved were involved in any of that. So it's innocent people that are being targeted here. And so none of this is productive. It's all insane. The protesters have a better chance of being, honestly, left-wingers as opposed to the shooter who nobody knows. And there is no left-wing group that's going to encourage anyone to commit violence like that. Right-wing says, oh, Second Amendment rights, so you got to act, you got to do something. There's no group on the left that says that. So if someone went rogue, that's a different story, okay? But in terms of the protesters, what are you guys doing? In front of people who were shot? We're against anyone innocent being shot. So I don't know why you would show up there, to protest the people who were shot? That's insane. So if they think they're on the left wing or they're progressives, that is not the way to do it. And you're totally wrong about that action and apparently the principles you think you have. But no, you don't go to the hospital to protest people who have just been shot.
Yeah, and it goes beyond protesting. I mean, it's the stuff that they were, reportedly shouting, and you guys can watch the videos for yourselves. We were going to grab a video to show you on the show, but the language was like littered with all sorts of words that we just can't air. So lots of stuff about, I want to deliver a message to the families. I hope they effing die. I hope they effing die. Like, oh God, it's pretty terrible. So those are the facts of the story. That's what we have now, and we'll update you as we learn more. But now moving on, there's a different angle to this story that I want to discuss, because while the left unequivocally condemns any type of murder, whether it's committed by someone on the left or the right, doesn't matter, it should be condemned, seems like the right wing only cares about the police getting ambushed and shot to death if they suspect the perpetrator is someone who's associated with Black Lives Matter. Now, just a few months ago in June 6th to be exact, in Northern California, 2 members of the Boogaloo Boys ambushed police officers and shot and killed them. And I don't remember Candace Owens freaking out about it, but Candace Owens did decide to use a recent story of 2 LA sheriff's deputies who were also ambushed. Luckily, they survived. To make a point about, athletes that she doesn't like because, if she's not picking on LeBron James, how is she going to get paid? Let's take a look at what she had to say in a tweet. She writes, why does this happen? Because pea-brained celebrities that are idolized like LeBron James tell young Black men that they are literally being hunted. This is the natural result of such hyperbolic, dishonest rhetoric. The racist, anti-police, Black Lives Matter lie is to blame. Now, LeBron James has never, ever said anything that would encourage violence. He has never encouraged violence. This is a complete and utter lie. But I do remember right-wingers encouraging violence. And it's actually led to things like mass shootings in this country. Here's one example featuring the El Paso shooting and how he was inspired by rhetoric by Donald Trump.
Law enforcement officials telling ABC News that before the chaos broke out,
Run, Mija, run!
that they believed the suspect had been looking for a good place to target and shoot Mexicans. Law enforcement officials telling us Crucius entered the Walmart on Saturday morning, first with no weapon, apparently to case it. Then they say, satisfied with what he saw, up to 3,000 shoppers inside, he left the store, armed himself, and then returned. Tonight, we are hearing from the survivors who crawled across that floor when he came armed with that assault-style rifle. Sylvia Sacedo on the floor with her 91-year-old mother. She pulled out her phone and began recording, in disbelief over what she could hear, what she could see. They were in the cafe having coffee. Now they were on the floor.
His goal was to, quote, shoot as many Mexicans as possible. So the possibility that this massacre was racially motivated certainly is a leading theory for investigators right now.
And Kira, you're learning more about reports of a document linked to the killer that expressed anti-immigrant views.
Right. And the El Paso police chief is saying that investigators are looking into what he is calling a manifesto. And it's believed to have been written by the shooter, saying that it shows a possible nexus to a hate crime. That document expressing fear that white voters in the U.S. will be replaced by Hispanics.
John Podesta, Hillary Clinton's campaign chairman, was quoted in WikiLeaks as saying, illegal immigrants could vote as long as they have their driver's license. You have people that are registered who are dead, who are illegals.
I have more examples I can go to, but Jenks, jump in.
Yeah, so I remember the right-wing militia that killed the cops in Nevada and put the Gadsden flag on them, don't tread on me. And given the number of cops that the right-wing militia kills, it's actually astounding that the cops are not more furious about it. Number of people who are officially part of the Black Lives Matter movement killing cops is 0. Every time someone Black kills a police officer, every right-winger in the country jump up and down. Black Lives Matter. Wait, are they actually connected to the group? No, not at all. Doesn't matter. They're Black. Whatever. Good enough, right? Whereas in the case of the right-wing shooters, they either directly say, yeah, Trump told me that they're criminals and rapists and I had to do something about it, or they put together a manifesto on race wars, or they're actually totally part of the groups, the militia groups that are right-wing. So this happens all the time. In fact, we've covered this before. The Department of Homeland Security under George W. Bush had written a report about it. Fox News and Rush Limbaugh complained so much that Barack Obama pulled it. It was an act of complete cowardice on the part of his administration. And when Trump got in office, he said, no, we're going to even disband anyone trying to cover the crimes of the right-wing militia, even targeting police officers. So, I mean, you want to talk about pea-brain. I don't think Candace Owens is that stupid, but she plays one on TV. And so she goes around in order to collect money from her right-wing suitors, turns around and claims that LeBron James is the one encouraging things like this. She knows it's going to get media attention when she mentions him, and accuses him of things that are preposterous and not anywhere near true. And on that note, let me just make one quick comment. LeBron James said the thing about being hunted in the case of Ahmaud Arbery, who was literally hunted down by two guys and shot while jogging in Georgia. And that was not a police shooting. That was two citizens, white right-wingers, who tracked him down and murdered him. There's no disputing what LeBron James said was an absolute fact and had nothing to do with the cops. So that leaves only the question of whether Candace Owens is in fact pea-brained and incredibly stupid, or whether she's corrupt and does it for money. I'm voting for option B, but have your pick.
Yeah, I'm voting for both. I think that it's not mutually exclusive. I think that she is pea-brained. I mean, she said in a hearing, I don't remember if it was in a hearing, but she literally said that the problem with Hitler wasn't that he wanted to make his country great. It's just that he was a globalist. That was the problem with Hitler. You don't remember that? Like,
Yeah,
that is an insane thing to say.
No, look, if a left-winger ever says something as abhorrent as the problem with Hitler wasn't killing 13 million people, including 6 million Jews, they would never, ever be accepted in democratic politics or any circle. When a right-winger says it, they're like, okay, run out the clock, 30 seconds in, nobody's paying attention because Trump said something worse, and we'll move on, and Candace Owens is totally legitimate, and no problem with Hitler, everybody's fine and happy. They quote her, they invite her, they give her money, they speeches, books, etc. They're feted basically. So the right wing has officially become ironically, the insane clown posse, and they fly their freak flag proudly.
The thing that bothers me the most, right, is that literally no one's life really matters to these people, because everything is seen as a situation where they can either exploit it for their own political agenda or ignore it. And in the case of the Boogaloo Boys ambushing and killing 2 police officers in Northern California, radio silence, right? No pressure to talk about those stories, no condemnations, none of that. They don't even care about cops. And I mean, you know that based on the types of policies they support as well, when you really think about it. I mean, the right wing is totally in favor of armor-piercing bullets, which law officials are 100% against because it threatens and risks their lives, right? They need to be able to protect themselves with, bulletproof vests and things like that. And these bullets literally go through it. Right wingers like, no, Second Amendment. We should have any type of weapon, any type of bullet we want, Second Amendment. They don't actually care about the cops. They just use what's happening right now between demonstrators and the cops to keep pushing forward with their political agenda. And the thing that frustrates me the most is they're winning. Like, they're winning the narrative. I mean, if you look at public polling and support toward Black Lives Matter, they're winning in the messaging war, and more people every week believe that Black Lives Matter is associated with looting and with riots, right? Nearly half of Americans think that at this point. So yeah, go ahead, Cenk.
Yeah, so sorry, a couple of things related to that. That's so frustrating. To your point about them winning the messaging wars, whenever a right-winger kills cops and says, I did it because I'm part of a right-wing militia and we think the government is jackbooted thugs and we like to kill them, no one ever asks Republican politicians, are you condemning that? Because they assume, like, of course, who would be monstrous enough to support that? That's never a question. It's never put on to Republicans. Anytime, in this shooting, no one knows who did the shooting. No one knows what his motive is. But now every Democrat and every progressive is asked, in essence, by the right wing and unwittingly by the media to apologize for it. What does it have to do with me? As a random guy went in New Zealand and shot 51 Muslims, why would I apologize for that? A random guy goes and shoots 2 cops in the middle of LA. Why would I apologize for that? Why would I? That doesn't make any sense. Obviously, we condemn innocent lives being taken in random shootings. That's the most progressive thing you could do. But they won the framing war so much that when actual right-wingers kill cops, no one asks right-wing politicians to apologize for it. When randos kill people, people turn to everybody on the left and goes, now you all apologize for something you didn't do and had no connection to. It's insane. And yet we accept it as normal. So, and right now, every right-winger is out there lying about this shooting and pretending that they know what it is. And they're setting the frame, and the media goes along with it far too often. And last thing on that is local news is a cancer. The reason why the polling shows Black Lives Matter taking a hit on whether they're rioters or not is because even though 93% of the protests are peaceful, according to a recent study that was done, and of the 7% that involve violence, it is oftentimes either the police or the right-wing militia that start the violence in a majority of those cases. But that's not what people see. People see burning buildings on local news 24/7 because local news is addicted to riot porn. So in every city, in every country, local news is pumping poison into people's minds going, oh my God, they're burning buildings, they're coming. It's black people. I mean, protesters are peaceful, but whatever, it's black people and burning buildings. So local news could not help Donald Trump more if they were actively trying to help them.
We got to take a break. When we come back, we have an update on Trump-fueled terrorism in this country, especially when it comes to extrajudicial killings, something that he just openly promoted in a recent interview. We'll be right back.
Are you a politician with a ridiculous point to make? Are you in need of a petulant, outdated way to make it? Then you'll need one of my signs. Hi, I'm Simon Simonson of Simonson Signs. We'll take the stupid, over-the-top, meaningless allegory you have and put it on foam core. So maybe someone will notice your grandstanding, because this is C-SPAN, and anything that's not people milling around in front of a running vote count is almost considered moderately entertaining. The bar is low, just like our prices. We've got plenty of designs. We also brought you Mike Lee's Tauntauns. They're tons of fun. What does this have to do with the Green New Deal? About as much as this other visual aid he used of Reagan on a T-Rex. Or is that a velociraptor? Who cares? Who the cares? No one gives a. Call us now at Simonson Signs. We'll make your stupid point stupidly for money today.
Viewers had asked for an interview with the TYT Lizard. Mr. Lizard. Oh, you changed colors today. Nice. I don't even know how you feel about us. Do you even like us?
Well, you guys made me this awesome house, so I'm kind of in your debt. I was found outside on the street, and you gave me a home. Granted, it was a really crappy home for a while, but then through the power of fundraising, I became a person who has a multi-level Trump-style mansion.
You do. By the way, you've never looked better, man. Normally, you're just green or just brown, but today you're in mid-lizard, right?
I'm not very smart. I'm a lizard, so I don't know how the science works. I guess this is just my mood. It's not every day that thresholds like this are broken. I'm just so excited. I can't contain my pigmentation.
And now you're showing it off.
Yep.
Yeah, I've never seen the lizard like this before.
300 million is a pretty good number. We were doing a press release on it, and I got all worked up. And I said, okay, well, that's the size of the U.S. population. You know what our next target is? The size of the entire world on the road to 6 billion. Although by the time we hit it, it'll probably be 7, maybe 8 billion.
Not a big deal. A couple of days ago on the TYT network, we passed 1 billion views.
What the hell?
What the hell?
That's a big freaking deal.
2 billion views.
What now?
Sorry.
What did we do? 2 billion?
2 billion.
They said it couldn't be done, but it was done.
We just crossed 5 billion views on YouTube.
I mean, imagine 10 years ago thinking, one day.
We looked at you like, are you nuts? Young Turks crosses 6 billion views.
Young Turks has just passed another milestone, 10 billion views.
Damn.
I just shot a clip. It's time sensitive and it needs to be edited right now.
Did anybody call for an editor?
Made this in an hour.
But you're an editor too.
All right, back on the Young Turks, Cenk and Anna with you guys. On Thursday, I'm going to be hosting a town hall event called No Dem Left Behind. These are for Democratic candidates running in red districts. We've got to support everybody involved. It's a group that Richard Ojeda is helping to lead. I'm going to talk to Ojeda. You'll see that tomorrow at 5:30 p.m. Eastern right here. And this event is, you could find out more about at tyt.com/Cenk Town Hall. And that's at Thursday at 8 o'clock Eastern. Okay, so check that out. And aspiration.com/TYT. Every new purchase plants 10 trees. There's a whole giant aspiration forest now, partly due to you guys. So aspiration.com/TYT. It's a great place for progressives to keep their money. And we're trying to work with more and more progressive companies that are actively trying to help. Aspiration does that through the environment. By the way, twostrongcoffee.com/TYT. Also, some of the proceeds for that, as you'll see there, go to progressive causes like Just Democrats, Wolfpack, Rebellion Pack, etc. So twostrongcoffee.com/TYT, and it's actually great coffee too. All right, your comments as quickly as I can. Anna's Margarita Salt said, just finished another 30,000 step walk, hike, jog, and just donated $50 to TYT. We are TYT and we are too strong. Love it. Thank you so much. TYT.com/go is our main donation effort this year, and it's so important to keep us strong. Progressive Pirate says, Candace Owens wants to be a pea-brain celebrity so bad. Well, she's halfway there. Dancing Crone speaks for a lot of people when they say, when you shine a light on fall media, you strengthen them. Look, we tried that route, guys, of ignoring the Candace Owens and the Ben Shapiro's of the world, and it only made them stronger. And they went unchallenged, and people started to believe them until we started going back in and kicking their ass. And now a lot of them, like Rubin and Shapiro, et cetera, are totally humiliated and exposed for the idiots that they are. So we'll do it one at a time, and bear with us as we do that. And we got to destroy these idiots on the right. I want to thank.
To that point, one of Candace Owens's supporters, I guess, sent me a message and was like, "Why don't you debate Candace Owens if you're not afraid?" So I just want to say it openly and publicly. I will happily debate Candace Owens anytime. I would love it. I would enjoy it. She probably would not, but open invitation. Continue, Jake.
All right. So let me thank the people who make this show possible. These are folks who just signed up on YouTube. You can just hit the join button below to make that happen. Michelle Ellis, Maria London, Lee Chen Shang, Jeanette Villalona, The Wiz is here, and Ann Harris. We love you guys. Thanks for doing that. Last one's from YouTube Super Chat. JW says, every day between 4 and 5, I turn to TYT. And obviously, depending on your local time, it might differ. It's 6 o'clock Eastern that we start the main show. For the last year, in that hour's time slot, I've never watched anything else. But my recommended videos page rarely shows TYT, and I have to dig and search for it. Yes, that is very annoying. So one way that you could really, really help, guys, is just the easiest thing in the world. It doesn't cost any money and barely costs any time. It takes about 2 seconds. Hit the share button every time you watch the stream. Hit the like button too. If you do that, it helps send our message out to so many more people, and we flip so many conservatives. So thank you guys. We appreciate it. And let's keep going.
All right. Michael Forrest Raynell was gunned down by law enforcement in Oregon after they claimed that he presented a weapon when they tried to apprehend him. Now, for those of you who might not have been following this story, he was one of the protesters in Portland, Oregon, who gunned down a Patriot Prayer member. That's a right-wing extremist group that showed up to protest against Black Lives Matter one night. Unfortunately, tensions flared and it led to this shooting. Now, later, Raynell spoke to Vice and explained that he did it because he was defending himself, but he'll never see his day in court because cops gunned him down. Now Trump is actually celebrating extrajudicial killings and promoting the idea. He did so in a recent interview. Let's take a look.
Now, we sent in the U.S. Marshals for the killer, the man that killed the young man in the street. Just shot him. I mean, it was on television. Cold-blooded killed him. He didn't like his hat, or he didn't like something, and it wasn't a Trump hat.
Right. It was peaceful.
It was
prayer.
It was a lot. It was a religious hat.
Right.
And he shot him cold blood. 2.5 days went by, and I put out, when are you going to go get him? And the U.S. Marshals went in to get him.
Good.
And in a short period of time, they ended in a gunfight. This guy was a violent criminal.
A lot of them out there.
And the U.S. Marshals killed him. And I will tell you something, that's the way it has to be. There has to be retribution when you have crime like this.
All right, so a few corrections before you jump in, Cenk. So the Patriot Prayer member wasn't wearing religious garb. He was wearing a Patriot Prayer hat, which identifies the right-wing extremist group that he's associated with. So that's point number one. Point number two, there was no gunfight. Even the authorities acknowledge that Raynell presented a weapon, but they don't really go into details. They certainly don't say that he fired his weapon. And there is a witness who spoke to the Washington Post. We talked about this story last week. His name is Nate Dingus, and he lives in the apartment complex where Raynell was shot and killed. And he said that the cops didn't announce themselves at all, and that he did not see Raynell present any type of weapon. Now, that's the account from one witness. But again, I mean, he's dead now. So I wish that there would be a robust investigation into this, but I'm not holding my breath. Cenk.
Yeah, so 3 things here. First, it's the Patriot Prayer Group, which is a far right-wing militia, as Anna explained. But Janine Pirro, if you notice there, said it was a hat about a peaceful prayer group. Come on, man. They're nothing about a peaceful prayer group at all, but that's how they frame things. And when we say Fox News lies, that's among the things that we're talking about. They didn't say, hey, the guy who got shot was part of a right-wing militia group that had gone there to agitate protesters and see if he could provoke violence. Instead, he was a peaceful prayer guy, and then they shot him in the street. Anyway, the guy who was shot, we don't have to get into it because he should have never been shot, in my opinion. Neither side should have guns, and that's abhorrent either way, but they certainly don't frame it that way. Now, when it comes to the guy who was shot, the left-winger shot by the police, look, here's how I know that there was no shootout with the cops. Investigators say they're not sure that he fired any shots. That means he didn't fire any shots. If cops thought he fired shots, they'd immediately say he fired shots and that's why we killed him. Then they say they're not sure yet that he presented a weapon. That means he didn't present a weapon. There's no way in the world cops are putting out a statement about a guy they just shot if there was a gunfight where they say we're not sure he even presented a weapon. No, none of that happened. The witness who says that they shot him without even identifying themselves is far, far, far more likely to be correct than cops who just shot the guy dead. So, and now the most important part of the story is about Trump.
I got to add something to that. I got to add to that, Cenk, because it's important. Because you're right. I mean, the cops they're very vague, right? So this is according to reporting from the Oregonian. Police have said Raynell was found with a handgun, but have not said if he fired any shots at officers. Thurston County Sheriff's Lieutenant Ray Brady said he didn't have any information regarding whether he fired any shots or produced his handgun during the encounter that night. So those are the facts coming from the actual cops. So sorry for that interruption, but I wanted to make sure people had those details. Go ahead.
Yeah, no question about it. And now the final piece it has a good intro from one of our members, John Campbell Reese, who just wrote in. He says, no, Mr. President, you don't need retribution. You need justice. That's exactly right. People who are in favor of the rule of law don't go around looking for retribution. They go looking for justice through a system of government that produces that justice. And it produces it no matter what the skin color is, the race, religion, name, or identification of anyone, right? That's why justice is supposed to be blind. But that's not what Trump believes in. Trump believes in what he just told you. He says, look, I asked the marshals to get involved. Next thing you know, the guy's dead in the street. We needed that kind of retribution. He's not hiding it. He just said it.
Yeah.
And that's how fascism works. Eventually, they go from, oh, we're doing it for law and order to we're just doing it because we have the power to do it and you can't stop us.
Yeah, and I think what gets lost in the constant like how people politicize these stories and how people like to go off into their own corners is things get, I think, intentionally misinterpreted. And look, the point is we shouldn't give a green light to any government agency, any law enforcement agency to decide whether someone gets to live or die. They don't get to be the ones who carry out the entire justice system, right? So if someone is suspected of committing a crime, they should be detained. They should face an investigation. They should stand trial. Justice should be served. No one is saying, oh, these people are totally innocent and let them go. No, let them go and be free. That is not a talking point that I've heard any serious person make. But I do hear the right wing intentionally put out this false narrative to make it appear as though people on the left want criminals running around all over the place and for no justice to be served. But look, regardless of where you stand on this debate, you have to take a step back and ask yourself if you're comfortable promoting and supporting a system that allows for the state to carry out executions, to allow for a police department to carry out executions just based on who they feel is guilty or not guilty. That's not okay. That is not how justice is carried out. And so this is a huge issue, and Trump is only fueling that issue, right? When Duterte, the leader of the Philippines, was talking about allowing cops to just carry out extrajudicial killings, tens of thousands of people died within the first few months that he was elected. And it was just based on cops thinking like, oh yeah, this person's probably in possession of drugs. This person is probably trafficking drugs. No, that's a scary situation to live under. And we're increasingly turning into that. And it's terrifying.
So I look, the guy in Portland who shot the right winger, I wish he was brought to justice. And I wish there was a trial and that the family of the victim in that case would have gotten some degree of justice if the facts were borne out as they appeared to be. But when cops do extrajudicial killings, you don't know if you're getting justice. That's the whole point. It isn't about justice. Retribution is about vengeance that is sometimes purposely misdirected. The whole point of justice is directing it in the right direction, right? Getting it to the person that it belongs on, right? And so it doesn't mean not carrying out justice. There's a reason why all the left-wing slogans have justice in it. There's a reason why Justice Democrats are named Justice Democrats, because we seek justice. But if you're seeking retribution for political reasons, then you don't really care if it's the right person or the wrong person. You only care that they're on the wrong political side. And yes, that's fascism defined. When you empower government officials with guns to kill people without trials and say they were on the wrong side. That's a very scary place to be. And we're about 2 months away from finding out if that's the country we live in.
Well, when we come back from the break, we'll get into some of the details on Trump's love letters to Kim Jong-un, a brutal dictator in North Korea. We'll be right back.
Many of you already know that the TYT Army has been officially organizing for the past year. They're making decisions on which candidates and elected officials to help and always coming up with ways to inform people about progressive policies. Now, we want to give a huge shout out to some special volunteers and highlight accomplishments of our TYT Army. In Michigan, State Leader Tara West and Captain Justine Robinson organized the team's first Beer and Politics. How fun does that sound? Look, they thought of this idea at one of their monthly meetups in order to help connect TYT supporters and grow their team's volunteers. Here's what Tara had to say. Our first Beer and Politics event in Grand Rapids was a success. We had 5 new people show up who are enthusiastic about TYT. They all found out about our event through our text bank, and they liked the laid-back nature of our get-together. Looking forward to connecting with them next month and hopefully meeting a few more. Thank you, Tara and Justine, for leading the way in Michigan. To learn more about the TYT Army and how you can help from home or even start your own team, head to tyt.com/army. Check your spam folder for lost emails to stay up to date with our events.
You want to know how you could save money and save the planet? Hello, I got an awesome option for you guys. Aspiration.com/TYT. You plant not 1, not 5, 10 trees when you sign up. You know what trees do? Not a big deal, but one large tree can provide a day's supply of oxygen for up to 4 people. That's 40 people's oxygen just by signing up at aspiration.com/TYT. Sign up for a free spend and save account right now at aspiration.com/TYT.
I'm Mike Shekels, and I'm the Director of Technical Operations, so if you're frantically tweeting at us that something's broken, thank you, because I'm fixing it. This here is Johnny Greenwald.
I'm Manager of Post-Production Technology. Simplest terms is I deliver the content.
And this is our master control room. We have many, many more destinations than ever before, and we created this room to consolidate it, to make sure that everything's going out is up to standard, so we meet all of our contractual agreements.
Like all small businesses, we're struggling through this pandemic right now. We are doing a drive to keep TYT healthy. We want to be able to keep doing it, and it's been a Herculean task.
Ready for transport.
We're trying to raise $2 million overall, $200,000 a month if we can. If you can, and only if you can, tyt.com/go. Seriously, because we can't sustain this show without you. So thank you for making all this possible.
Where else can I feel as free as I do here to do what I do? And I wouldn't be able to do what I do if it weren't for all the people who have really carried us throughout the years.
You're our ultimate boss. We report to you guys, and if you don't like what we're doing on air or we're not telling the truth, boom, you fire us.
We're not the Young Turks, you're the Young Turks.
Keep TYT alive, healthy, wonderful, awesome, independent, progressive, keep it all those things. In fact, we have a new theme, Press On. Get it? It's a double meaning. tyt.com/go. I know what you're thinking. Cenk, where do I get unlimited, commission-free stock and ETF trades? Man, do I have good news for you. dough.com/TYT. Yes, it's really unlimited trading. Yes, it's totally commission-free. Yes, they explain what an ETF is if you don't know it. But that's what's great about Dough, because they have wonderful explainer videos, and you got 0 minimum balance. You got nothing for commissions. dough.com/TYT.
Today, a terrible day for the internet, a terrible day for America. The internet as we know it is not going to exist anymore.
A real dark day for information, and yet another way that they're bleeding out the democracy.
We're now going to have these gatekeepers of information deciding what we can and can't see, and that's what scares me the most.
Whether you're conservative or progressive or anywhere in the middle, this is the one thing we should all agree to. Protect the internet, because the establishment is coming for it. Don't let them destroy the internet.
Hey guys, back on the Young Turks. Let me read some comments real quick. Someone who likes Bernie Sanders is a member and wrote in, I know it's a serious story, but I'm a child and I will not let the name Nate Dingus go unnoticed. Somebody had to do it, brother. Okay. Zictor writes in, I really did not remember Ahmaud Arbery anymore. I remember the story, but not the name of the victim. Goes on to explain lives in Brazil and has to keep track of both of the sets of news. But it really goes towards an important point, which is, yeah, there's now so many African-American victims. You can't possibly remember all the names from the dozens of stories in the last couple of years alone. David Johnson very helpfully on YouTube Super Chat says, don't forget to like and share, folks. Involved to evolve. United States Marine Corps vets, hang in there. Love it. Thank you, David. Charles Massey says, thank God and baby Jesus for the TYT app. That's awesome.
Yes.
Parts of the TYT app is it's mobile, so you can take it anywhere you want and still watch us when we're live. And then last one is Mr. 44 Tube on YouTube Super Chat says, big ups, Cenk and Anna. Keep up the great work. Also, it's our buddy Ken's birthday today. If you can say happy birthday to him, that'd be awesome. Thank you. Happy birthday, Ken. Ask and ye shall receive. I'm actually going to do one from our Twitch audience, Vash MX91, resub for their 3rd month. Also, apparently, all of a sudden, out of nowhere, we have a hype train going. So if you're on Twitch, join the hype train. All right, Casper, go.
All right. Lost in the mix of Bob Woodward news, including news that Donald Trump intentionally downplayed the coronavirus, we've learned that, let me start that again. That was a horrible lead. Okay, we're doing it live. We're doing it live. I lost my train of thought, and it's okay. I'm a real person.
Just say real quick, I also forgot one thing. Hey guys, I wanted to update you real quick on the thermometer. So tyt.com/go. Okay, no, seriously. Because look, it makes the show possible, and we really appreciate it, and only through the end of this year. So let me see tyt.com/go. Hey, we're trying to get to 45,000 during the last segment, and we did 45,700. Really appreciate it. By the post game, we get to 46. That would be amazing. All right, Anna, go ahead.
All right. One of the many revelations from Bob Woodward's book touches on Trump's insane love affair with Kim Jong-un and the multiple, literally dozens of love letters they sent one another. Remember that Trump met with Kim Jong-un on 3 separate occasions, and Woodward had obtained dozens of those letters, and he details them in his upcoming book. Luckily, we've learned more about them before having to buy his book, and so let me share you some of those details. In one letter, Kim Jong-un allegedly wrote to Trump, our meetings, our relationship is out of a fantasy film. There's a magical force between us. Even now, I cannot forget that moment of history when I firmly held your excellency's hand as the whole world watched. Now, after Kim's first meeting with Trump, he also wrote, even now, I cannot forget that moment of history when I firmly held your excellency's hand. Wait, I already read that. Oh no, Excellency's hand at the beautiful and sacred location as the whole world watched with great interest and hoped to relive the honor of that day. Following the leader's second meeting, go ahead, Cenk.
Yeah, before we get into more details, I got to say that's actually the most pathetic thing I've ever read about Donald Trump. Now you're going to say, wait, Cenk, is that fair? Trump didn't write that. Kim Jong-un is writing that to him. Remember, Donald Trump said that they fell in love with each other. So Trump is a very happy and willing participant of this back and forth. But the most important part is Kim Jong-un, of course, is not writing those letters. That idiot Donald Trump doesn't even know that. It's some propaganda agent in North Korea who has deduced that you can get anything you want from Donald Trump as long as you flatter him about holding his hand and what a great king he would make, and it's that he's the excellency and all of that stuff. And they're like, they told Kim Jong-un, this guy is so dumb, he's the world's easiest guy to manipulate. You just say these outlandish things. Even the North Koreans must have been slightly embarrassed at writing this, going, really? Really, this is going to work? Because on any other human being, you'd be mortified. Oh my God. This 100%. Genocidal dictator is sending me love letters with the most gushing. I mean, even if he wasn't a dictator, it'd still be embarrassing. But Trump reads that and goes, nailed it. That's how dumb he is.
No, but okay. Yeah. So let's talk about that for a second, because Donald Trump is such an insecure little prick that he's constantly like searching for validation. And so dictators might be cruel, horrible people, but they're not necessarily dumb. And if they know how to manipulate someone for their own personal or political gain, they're certainly going to do it. Donald Trump has like a giant sign across his forehead that says, "I'll do anything for you if you compliment me." So that's why you have Kim Jong-un talking about firmness and hand-holding and all this uncomfortable stuff that I don't want to read about anymore, but this is the news cycle. This is what we're dealing with right now. So following the leaders' second meeting, Kim wrote in June of 2019 that every minute we shared 103 days ago in Hanoi was also a moment of glory that remains a precious memory. I also believe that the deep and special friendship between us will work as a magical force. And Trump responded to it, by the way. So let me give you a little taste of Trump's love letters to Kim Jong-un. Only you and I working together can resolve the issues between our two countries and end nearly 70 years of hostility, bringing an era of prosperity to the Korean Peninsula that will exceed all our greatest expectations. And you will be the one to lead. It will be historic. Now, look, let me be clear. I think people know this already, but just in case, I prefer a diplomatic route to denuclearizing countries. Now, keep in mind that Woodward's book also released some new information about Trump and how he's been developing more nuclear weapons, classified nuclear weapons that the general public obviously doesn't know much about. So Trump's, obviously building nuclear weapons while, accusing Iran of doing the same and trying to convince other countries to denuclearize. I mean, you can lead by example, but of course, Trump isn't interested in doing that. And also, let me read a little bit more from what we know about their meetings and what they've been communicating with one another. Following the demilitarized zone meeting, Trump wrote to Kim on June 30th, "Being with you today was truly amazing," attaching a copy of the New York Times front page from that day. 2 days later, Trump wrote again, sending 22 photographs and a mixtape of their meeting. I'm just kidding. There was no mixtape. And then he says, "These images are great memories for me and captured the unique friendship that you and I have developed." Okay. But here's the problem. Kim Jong-un didn't do anything, right? He didn't stop building nuclear weapons. He didn't stop with the missile testing. He's still doing that. And all Trump accomplished was propaganda that North Korea desperately wanted, right? Pro-North Korea propaganda. And we got nothing in return.
So that's exactly right. If you say, hey, listen, guys, don't you want diplomacy? Absolutely. And if Trump was lying to Kim Jong-un and telling him how much he wanted to caress his hand and send some beautiful pictures of them together in front of a Korean gulag, but it gets the job done and we get a great peace deal with North Korea, I can live with it, okay? But we got nothing from North Korea. They developed half a dozen nukes under Trump's watch, just caught my phone, and we got zero diplomacy, zero results. All we got was Donald Trump's ego stroke. This is what he said about those letters well before that they were released, okay? He said, "He wrote me beautiful letters, and they're great letters. We fell in love." That's a direct quote from Donald Trump. See, look, guys, he looked at those letters that any other human being would be mortified to get and thought, this guy loves me and I love him back. And I don't care how many nukes he builds. I don't care how many Americans, South Koreans, Japanese lives he threatens. I don't care how many concentration camps he runs. He likes me, so I'm going to give him whatever he wants. That's the pathetic man we have in charge.
It's just so sad. And even after these revelations were uncovered by Woodward, he did talk about them in some detail prior to the 60 Minutes interview that he had this past weekend. Trump put out this tweet, which I thought was amazing. There have been some rumors about Kim Jong-un's health and how he's been struggling lately. And so Trump tweets, Kim Jong-un is in good health. Never underestimate him. What is wrong with you? Like, what okay, all right, great, awesome. And by the way, Woodward also says that, intelligence officials do know about these communications, the love letters, all of that. He also says the analysts concluded that they're masterpieces because they are appealing to Trump's sense of grandiosity. So even Woodward says it, even the intelligence community says it. But more importantly, Kim Jong-un might not even be the one writing these letters, right? It might be like his.
Of course.
Yeah. So.
Yeah. But Trump, on the other hand, probably is dictating the letters himself. Tell him how much I love him too. And I'm thinking of sending him Van Halen in the mixtape. He'll really enjoy that. Of course, the propagandists in North Korea are writing those letters. And of course, they've analyzed Trump's tiny little mind and thought it would work, and it did. Guys, when he says that he supports leaders that are stronger, that's another comment he made about Erdogan and Putin and Kim Jong-un and Duterte. These are all authoritarian to dictators. And he says, and the ones that are our allies, he says he doesn't like as much. That's because he likes dictators. So the right wing is unfortunately hopeless. If you can't see now that he fell in love with a communist dictator, there's no hope for you. All right, post-game's coming up. Hit the join button below. You're going to love it, including stories on how they are going to start fascism. According to Roger Stone, that's paraphrasing, but we'll give you the full details when we come back.
We're very honest that we're progressives. We call the Young Turks home of progressives, and we support progressive candidates.
There has been this reemergence of political activism, especially among young people.
This weekend was the second Women's March, both across the U.S. and across the world. So these people are not simply marching, they're not simply talking, they're also running for office. And when they do run, they're going to make a difference.
Joe Crowley is congressman from New York. He's very powerful. Why? He raised a lot of money. But there's someone finally challenging him.
We need to have representation that advocates as fiercely for working class people as possible from this seat.
If candidates like Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez even get a little bit of media attention outside of what the Young Turks does, they have an excellent chance of winning.
She's going to win. She's going to win.
68% reporting.
The majority of Americans want Medicare for all. So I don't care what you and your corporate cronies want. What I care about is what the American people want.
We believe in total change. Everything runs on donor money. And that is what we will fight, and that is exactly why they don't like us.
We're having fun. It's election night.
Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez has defeated Joe Crowley.
Here we go again.
Ladies and gentlemen, we got him.
Down goes Crowley. Down goes Crowley. Down goes Manafort. Down goes Cohen. Women came out in record numbers in the primaries. They said you'll be lucky to get one candidate. We now have 12 that have won their primaries.
Bezos and Amazon announcing that they are going to go to a 15-hour minimum wage.
We're making progress. Let's keep going.
Many of these women made history.
The biggest victories, all women of color. Rashida Tlaib and Ilhan Omar, Sharice Davids and Deb Haaland.
And I want to go to Congress because I want to change those things.
I'm calling it. Jamal Bowman has won. Down goes Engel. Down goes Engel.
For a long time, we have not had progressives in power. It's going to be something to behold.
Welcome to Happy Hour, everybody. After a week of soul-crushing news, we break out the good stuff. Good news, good videos, good people, and, of course, drink good alcohol. That's the worst thing I've ever had.
This is the best show.
Full disclosure, we did do a shot right before the show began. It says,
Let's
flamingo.
Flamingo.
The reason you had trouble with that word is it's not a word.
Okay.
This is the one of everything.
I've got a rash. Could I just put it on that to see if it'll take it off?
What did you used to think this was?
Bull piss.
Drink it, swallow it,
No.
spit it. Oh, that's needed after a day like this.
Cheers to Brett Ehrlich.
Climax. Uranus smells like farts. Because of course it does. This is the worst sketch ever of a perp. But guess what, ladies and gentlemen? They found the guy! This is Sophie's super happy dog story of the week.
This dog is so precious and deserves the world. I'm just not drinking that beer.
Here's my dog. This is Onyx.
Yeah, I would just say that he's exotic because he's not your traditional dog. Still 12 out of 10 because they're all good.
Well, if that made you happy, just wait till you see the best thing ever of the week. There is a woman who moves like a horse.
Why do I want to go home and like try this?
We're actually going to show you the running butthole challenge right now. What's happening?
No, that's just wrong. Every way. And we'll see you next time.
Hey, Dave. As you can probably see, Skype froze. Frozen crashed.
You know, I'm watching that documentary on the Vietnam War, and there was a TV journalist in the middle of some tiny little village in Vietnam doing live TV as the soldiers were burning the Vietnamese huts, and it didn't crash. And that was 1965, and he was in Vietnam.
All right, back on the Young Turks post-game. Cenk and Anna with you guys. Lots of stories. Let's get right to it.
Yes, let's get right to it. So we begin with one of my least favorite people, Roger Stone. So Roger Stone, a criminal who was pardoned by Donald Trump, is now out pushing all sorts of insane conspiracy theories. He is fear-mongering about the outcome of the general election, and is pushing this false narrative that the left is going to refuse to accept Trump's win and that the right needs to be prepared for that. Now, keep in mind, Trump is the one who's been spreading conspiracy theories about voter fraud that doesn't exist. He's the one who's also dismantling the post office, so people will have a difficult time voting by mail. And the right is certainly what we should be considering when it comes to the outcome of this election and whether they might be rigging it. But nonetheless, he encouraged federal authorities to seize ballots in Nevada. Take a listen.
I don't want to overplay the facts here, but if someone will study the president's authority in the Insurrection Act and in his ability to impose martial law, if there's widespread treating, he will have the authority to arrest Zuckerberg, to arrest Tim Cook, to arrest the Clintons, to arrest anybody else who can be proven to be involved in illegal activity.
Okay, so in that video, he was actually promoting the idea of Trump using martial law. And then let's get to the Nevada ballots video next, because that's where he talks about voter fraud and how the left is trying to rig the election. Again, no evidence of this whatsoever. But these are the types of conspiracy theories that Trump listens to and certainly pushes.
The ballots in Nevada on election night should be seized by federal marshals and taken from the state. They are completely corrupted. No votes should be counted from the state of Nevada if that turns out to be the provable case. We can prove voter fraud in the absentees right now. Send federal marshals to the Clark County Board of Elections, Mr. President. It's all there. The votes from Nevada should not be counted. They are already flooded with illegals.
Cenk.
Yeah. So the only upside of Roger Stone is he's the one that comes closest to just saying it. And this is almost there, where he's saying, look, we know, if you haven't seen the numbers, the part of the reason why the Democrats are buoyant is because the number of people that are requesting mail-in ballots are overwhelmingly people who are registered as Democrats, as opposed to people who are registered as Republicans. At the end of the day, there's no way of knowing who they're going to vote for, but that's a pretty good indicator. So based on that, it looks like, and the Republicans see the same exact numbers, that's why they're freaking out about mail-in ballots. That's why Trump is saying, don't count whatever you do, the mail-in ballots are all going to be fraudulent. Because Democrats in the swing states are asking for those at 3-to-1 rates. The Republicans are toast. So the idea here is they're going to try to push everybody to vote on day of. Then they're going to say not only don't count the rest of the ballots, but now Roger Stone is flat out saying just seize the ballots so no one can count them. And that's as close to an admission that we're just going to do a fascist takeover of the country as anyone could possibly do. So if I thought the Democrats, if I thought the Republicans were going to rig an election, would I say we should grab the ballots and do whatever we want with them? No, under no circumstances would I say that. I would want an independent body to get the ballots and make sure that there's no fraud and that they're counted properly. That's not what Roger Stone is saying. Make sure the federal government grabs state records, state votes, so they cannot be counted. You'll have to just trust Donald Trump that he won. And then at that point, we start arresting anyone who disagrees, which is as close as you'll get to an admission that we're going to do martial law and we're the fascists and we're here. And if we don't win this election, it doesn't matter. We're going to say we won the election and we're going to do all these things. Now, that doesn't mean they're going to, by the way. That's Roger Stone cheerleading for it. Donald Trump has set up the first part of that. It's still my belief and hope that he's going to get blown out under any and all circumstances, and they're not going to be able to put this into effect. But if the election is anywhere near close, oh boy, they're going to go for a full fascist takeover.
Well, Roger Stone wants to encourage a multi-pronged approach here, Cenk. So not only does he want to confiscate ballots, specifically in Clark County, an area that does lean, Democratic, he also is calling on Republican officials and the FBI to physically block voters from being able to vote. Listen.
The president should call former Congressman Bob Barr, and he should ask him, he should appoint him a special counsel, he should order his appointment as a special counsel with the specific task of forming an election day operation using the FBI, federal marshals, and Republican state officials across the country to be prepared to file legal objections and, if necessary, to physically stand in the way of criminal activity.
I mean, and by the way, in addition to that, I should note, we've covered this story before, Republicans are planning on sending what they're referring to as poll watchers, off-duty law enforcement that's planning on showing up to pretend like they're going to try to prevent voter fraud, a problem that doesn't actually exist, when in reality, it's about intimidating voters, and this is something that the Supreme Court had ruled on decades ago because they recognized that the Republican Party was using this tactic to manipulate and intimidate voters. And unfortunately, that law has expired, and now Republicans are planning on implementing this type of strategy again. And so it really is a multi-pronged approach. I mean, I love your optimism, Cenk, but I don't know. I don't know how you stay so optimistic. Everything that Trump has threatened to do, he has done, with the exception of actually building the wall on the southern border.
I'm not at all optimistic about what Trump or Roger Stone would do. If Roger Stone had the opportunity, he'd end democracy so quick, make your head spin. He wouldn't hesitate for 1 second. I'm under no illusions. He went on to talk about how Trump should use martial law or the Insurrection Act to carry out widespread arrests. He talked about nationalizing the state police forces. If you're a conservative, the idea of the federal government nationalizing local government's policing powers is absurd. It'd be the number one thing you'd be opposed to on principle. But, we're going to do fascism and we're not going to do democracy anymore? Yes, great. Then let's nationalize the state police, take away all local rights, end the blue states' ability to control themselves, end fair elections, steal the votes from Nevada. Who cares? Win, 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 win. Power. Might makes right. It's fascism 101. That's who Roger Stone is. I'm not optimistic that they're going to change their stripes at all. I'm not at all optimistic that Trump wouldn't try all of that if he's within 3 or 4 points. Right now, he's not. That's all I'm saying. And the polling is not wrong. He's down by 10. And so he's not down by 10 in swing states. And you should not, under any circumstances, relax. You should vote, 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 vote. Whatever you do, make sure that you vote. Don't do like 2016. Don't worry about it. We're going to win anyway. That's the message the idiots on Hillary Clinton's team and the mainstream media told you. We already won. Who cares? No, they're the morons who cost us this election. Having said that, don't panic and think, oh my God, we got it wrong last time. Let's jump off a cliff right now. No, let's go vote, and then let's make sure that that vote is enforced. And on that count, by all means.
All right. So we're going to move on to our next story, but just a note to Brett and Brandon, I'm going to go out of order in the videos. So I'm going to do G1, G3, then G2. Okay, cool. All right. So let's move on to cuties. So conservatives are intentionally pushing a false narrative about a new Netflix film that actually denounces the hypersexualization of young girls. And the reason why they're intentionally spreading disinformation about the film is because it's not a secret. They're trying to rile up QAnon conspiracy theorists who are honestly an ever-growing presence within the Republican electorate. And so QAnon, for those of you who might not have been following this story, has this ridiculous conspiratorial ideology alleging that there is a cabal of satanic, or Satan worshipers who also happen to be pedophiles running a global sex trafficking ring involving children. These pedophiles are also allegedly trying to plot against Trump. Now they're being provoked by these prominent conservatives, including Ted Cruz, who claim that Cuties is promoting pedophilia. Now, according to The Verge, conservative provocateurs like Steven Crowder and conspiracy theorists like Alex Jones dedicated videos to calling out the leftist media and that praised Cuties. Writers and personalities from conservative publications like the Daily Caller and Breitbart also criticized the film's content. Now, again, let me reiterate, the whole point of the film is to draw attention to condemn the hypersexualization of young girls. And that context certainly matters. But of course, conservatives leave that context out and make it appear as though this is nothing more than a film that's just attempting to sexualize children and lure in pedophiles. That is not the case. Now, Ted Cruz, for instance, one of the right-wingers who tweeted about this said, Netflix is trying to profit from the sexual exploitation of young children through its latest film, Cuties. That's not right. As a parent, I find it disturbing. Then you have another right-winger, Tulsi Gabbard, tweeting, Cuties will certainly whet the appetite of pedophiles and help fuel the child sex trafficking trade. 1 in 4 victims of trafficking are children. It happened to my friend's 13-year-old daughter. Netflix, you are now complicit. #cancel Netflix. She then later said that she canceled Netflix herself. But here's the problem. Most of the people who have these criticisms haven't actually watched the film. So, Cenk, let me give you a little bit of background and then we'll bring you in. Cuties is a French movie that critiques society's sexualization of girls. The movie follows an 11-year-old Senegalese girl living in Paris who dreams of joining a local dance clique. She decides to protest her parents' strict household and join the other girls in dancing their way through competitions, trying to make a name for themselves. Cuties uses uncomfortable images to provoke a serious conversation about the sexualization of girls, especially regarding girls of color, the policing of girls' sexuality, double standards, the effect of social media on kids, and how children learn these behaviors. And that was actually a review written by Monica Castillo on RogerEbert.com. And so, Cenk, I want to get your thoughts on all of this.
All right. So first of all, there is no legitimate Republican Party anymore. So if you catch any so-called reporter talking about, mainstream Republicans, they're basically lying to you. Which mainstream Republicans? Doing what? Ted Cruz is a bastion of the Republican Party. He's a United States Senator from Texas. He's not alone. All these guys. Lara Trump, part of the Trump family, going in and campaigning with people who say 2,000 Muslims dead isn't enough, and we're looking forward to another 2,000 more. Total lunatics. So in this case, the film is against sexualizing young kids. but they don't care about what's true. All they care about is probably, they know that their lies will be aided and abetted by Fox News. Ted Cruz goes on with Maria Bartiromo. She helps him. They both pretend the movie is child porn. It's like one of the most outrageous accusations I've ever seen. And then they play the clip of the movie that Ted Cruz claims is child porn on the interview. So even if you believe that Ted Cruz's ideology and you thought it was child porn, well, then Maria Bartiromo and the executives at Fox News should be arrested because they just showed the same exact thing.
It's just so transparently disingenuous. And we actually have that clip, which we'll get to in just a minute. And what's also important about that clip is it's just jarring in how transparent it is in making it about this election, right? And that's how you know they're trying to rile up QAnon conspiracy theorists, which is dangerous because these are the types of people who walk into random pizzerias in DC that they're accusing of running child sex trafficking rings with no evidence whatsoever. Someone could have gotten killed when that happened a few years ago. So there are actual ramifications and consequences to this, but they don't care. They're going to go ahead and you do the dog whistles. They're going to rile up some of the most unhinged individuals in this country, knowing full well how dangerous that could really be. And in the very, very beginning, there actually was some legitimate criticism, but it wasn't toward the film. It was toward the way Netflix was promoting the film. So for instance, if you're in France and you come across any type of promotion of the film, you might come across this movie poster, right? And so it shows the young girls, they're on the street, they're dancing, they look like they're having a good time. When Netflix promoted it, they used this imagery and they honestly misrepresented what the film is really about in the text included in the in the tweet. So they said something along the lines of, Amy becomes fascinated with a twerking dance crew. No, but that's not what the movie is about. And if you see that imagery and you see those words, then yeah, you're going to be super suspicious about this movie. And so there was, I think, justified criticism toward that, and Netflix apologized for it. But it's not in any way representative of what the film is actually about. Now I want to talk about the hypocrisy, because that's the most important part of all of this. So these QAnon conspiracy theorists think that Donald Trump is the savior, that he's the good guy who wants to do something about child trafficking. He wants to do something about pedophilia. He wants to do something about young girls being hypersexualized. Except Donald Trump has profited handsomely off of hypersexualizing young girls. And in fact, at one point, it was revealed that when he was running Miss Teen USA, he would just walk into the dressing rooms where underage girls were naked in a lot of cases to inspect the situation. So let me give you some excerpts from CBS News. There was one, I'm sorry, let's go to the Rolling Stone article. Trump entered the Miss Teen USA changing room where girls as young as 15 were in various states of undress. Maria Bellado actually talked about this. She was Miss Teen Vermont in 1997. And she says, I remember putting on my dress really quick because I was like, oh my God, there's a man in here. Miss Arizona, Tasha Dixon, also said she experienced similar behavior by Trump when she was a contestant. He just came strolling right in. There was no second to put a robe on or any sort of clothing or anything. Some girls were topless, other girls were naked. Our first introduction to him was when we were at the dress rehearsal and half naked, changing into our bikinis. And by the way, Trump even confessed to this in 1997. Let's take a listen to that.
And everyone's getting dressed and ready and everything else. And, you know, no men are anywhere. And I'm allowed to go in because I'm the owner of the pageant and therefore I'm inspecting it.
Like, what are you inspecting? But no. Yeah. The lunatics think that that's the savior who's going to uncover and stop child sex trafficking in this country. And then here's Ivanka Trump at 15 this is in 1997, dressed very similar to how the girls in Cuties are dressed. So if they have a problem with the way the girls are dressed in that film, I wonder if they have a problem with the way Ivanka Trump was dressed in 1997.
Yeah, so some of the Miss USA pageant contestants said Donald Trump would keep asking, "How hot do you think my daughter is?" And for the Miss Teen USA, 4 different contestants confirmed he walked in when they were half naked. And Trump joked about this with Howard Stern all the time. He joked about sleeping with the contestants. Now remember, there's a couple of different pageants there. I hope he was talking about the adults. Even that is terrible when you just barge into the dressing room of adult women and then say, hey, this is my pageant and you should sleep with me. That's already horrible. But when you do it with people who barge into the rooms of Miss Teen USA that are as young as 15, it's beyond horrible. But look, if you say, hey, that's he's joking around about sleeping with 15-year-olds, okay. I don't know that makes it that much better, but if that's gets you to sleep at night. But remember, there was a 10-year-old he met. This is on tape. He said, in 10 years, I'll be dating her. Who says that about a 10-year-old? What kind of monster does that? But okay, how about the most famous child trafficker in the news, certainly in recent memory, Jeffrey Epstein? Trump was great friends with him, used to party with him all the time, went to his parties. Not only that, you say, well, that was a long time ago. He didn't like him anymore. I don't know if they had a dispute about, who should get what girl or whatever it was. Well, Ghislaine Maxwell, his co-conspirator, Epstein's co-conspirator, was just arrested. Trump repeatedly said, no, I wish her well. I really wish her well. She's a child trafficker. He's wishing a child trafficker well right in front of your eyes. And you go, well, How about that movie that's against sexualizing children? I'll pretend that's the real problem and that Netflix is working with a cabal of politicians and we'll have congressional hearings over it, and that Ted Cruz will, apparently lead, and we'll have Fox News all pretend that Netflix is in favor of pedophilia when the guy who's in favor of the child trafficker who wishes her well is actually your leader. So that's what the right wing has evolved to in this country. And if you're still a part of it, whoa, oy.
Yeah, it's awful, right? And today, and I wish we could have used this video on the show, but we couldn't due to copyright issues. There was a local news report out of Salt Lake City. There was a small group of right-wingers who were livid about the fact that there's a mask mandate because, coronavirus is still killing an average of 1,000 people every single day. And so one of the protesters, this elderly woman, was like, molesters love masks. That's why I'm against it. Which, by the way, just clarified further that for QAnon conspiracy theorists, I have trouble believing that they actually genuinely believe what they're saying. I think that they're using accusations of pedophilia and some of the worst accusations imaginable, right? The worst kind of false thing you can accuse someone of. They're using it whenever they want to reject either a person, a politician, a proposal, a law, whatever it is. No, I'm against it because pedophiles like it. I'm against masks because molesters like it. Oh, okay. So I guess that's just the go-to reason for being against something now. It's crazy. And then finally, I wanted to talk about Michael Cohen's daughter because this part grosses me out even further because both Trump and Michael Cohen are super questionable. Trump apparently hit on Michael Cohen's daughter when she was underage, and Cohen wrote about it in his book. His daughter further confirmed what happened during an interview with CNN. Let's take a quick look at that video.
And you were playing tennis and you came off the court. And here's how it was written in Vanity Fair. Somehow Trump's attention was diverted to another skirt walking off a tennis court. Quote, look at that piece of ass, Cohen recalls Trump saying as he whistled and pointed. Quote, I would love some of that. It so happened that Trump was referring to Cohen's then 15-year-old daughter, Samantha. Do you remember that moment? Because it goes on to write that after that, you came over, he wanted you to give him a kiss, and he said, when did you get such a great figure?
So, as I told Emily, the story is a little bit less clear to me. I'm sure many women can relate. You become desensitized to men making these kinds of comments to you, and you allow them to go over your head and you kind of tune out the noise. But what stood out to me in that moment was he said to my dad, well, there's no way that she got her looks from you. Thank God you married a beautiful woman.
It should be noted that Michael Cohen continued working for Trump after that whole exchange, which is why no good guys in that part of the story at all. But going back to Ted Cruz makes it clear, so does Maria Bartiromo, that this whole narrative is about scaring suburban women and helping Donald Trump with his reelection campaign.
I guarantee you every pedophile in America is going to watch this movie, and that Netflix is sitting back fat and happy making money on it. That's not right.
Unbelievable. You would think that suburban housewomen would be with you on that as well, by the way, going into this election.
They don't even hide it, Cenk. They don't even hide it. They don't even hide it. They accuse people of the worst things for political purposes. Like, it's insane.
I'm really glad you brought that up. This was originally an alt-right trick, and they proudly bragged about it about 5-6 years ago. They would say, look, let's just go around smearing people as pedophiles. It doesn't matter if it's true or not. It'll be the first thing that shows up in their Google search, and their lives will be ruined. So we get to ruin the lives of our political opponents, and it's a great trick. It's the hardest thing in the world to fight, and then no one wants to, just in case there's a 1% chance that it's true, no one wants to defend you. Perfect way to do political assassinations. And so now they've taken that to a meta situation where they're just not doing it one by one. They're accusing anyone they don't agree with, Netflix, Democrats, Tom Hanks. It doesn't matter. They're accusing Dr. Fauci, Bill Gates. It doesn't matter. They're accusing all of them of pedophilia. And they're saying, so the only way you could make sure that you protect the children. I mean, these are the Trump said, no, I hid coronavirus facts because I didn't want people to panic. Then he goes, pedophilia, right? No, the whole point is to create fear and panic and to destroy their political opponents. It's the sickest, most craven strategy I have ever seen in politics. And so that's why I say, look, this is not normal times. If you're still a Republican and you're part of that party, who are you? What kind of grotesque thing have you signed up for? And if you're part of the media and you're still not calling out this phenomenon, you're not a real reporter. You just do political correctness. You're a news actor. It's sick. By the way, in that story about Michael Cohen's daughter, he says those comments about the 15-year-old. Okay, Michael Cohen says, no, that's my daughter. At that point, Trump then, when she comes by, asks for a kiss. Now, you've seen him say on tape, I just kissed them without their permission. In many other instances, he talks about, by the way, the pageant contestants also said the same thing. He just come in and kiss us on the lips without asking. So, and Michael Cohen knows that. And so knowing that Michael Cohen knows that, he tells him, now that I found out it's your 15-year-old daughter, let me kiss her. Oh, God damn it, man. They're the sickest people alive. And then they turn around and accuse other people of this stuff. So their strategy is crystal clear. And Maria Bartiromo, having what do suburban housewives have anything to do with the policy issue at hand? Nothing. She's saying, now remember, suburban housewives, vote against all Democrats because of pedophilia. Wink.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I mean, that disinformation campaign is specifically targeted toward mothers living in suburban areas. And so QAnon, part of the reason why it's so successful in spreading is it uses these like innocuous hashtags like Save the Children. And they really kind of bring people in without them realizing what they're actually about. And slowly but surely, people get radicalized into conspiracy theorists. It's actually pretty terrifying. So that's what we're dealing with now, which is why it's important not to empower these people in any way or embolden them. And so, yeah, we need to get Trump out. Let's move on to one last story that I really wanted to talk about today, because for the love of God, please, Biden, please listen to Bernie. Please listen to Bernie. Please, please. So Panic is starting to set in as we inch closer to the general election. If you look at polling from swing states, unfortunately, Donald Trump has been able to narrow a giant gap between himself and Joe Biden. And now sources close to Bernie Sanders tell the Washington Post that Bernie's kind of worried about this and has advised Biden to pivot toward issues that, actually matter to the vast majority of people, as opposed to just focusing on the small group of never Trump Republicans who have helped him with the Lincoln Project or whatever it is. And so Sanders has told his associates that Biden is at risk of coming up short in the November election if he continues his vaguer, more centrist approach. Sanders says Biden should talk more about health care and about his economic plans and should campaign more with figures popular among young liberals, such as Representative Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez. Now, Bernie's campaign manager, Faz Shakir, did confirm with the Washington Post that Bernie has these critiques, and they're meant to be constructive critiques because Bernie wants Biden to beat Trump. That's what this story is about. Senator Sanders, Faz Shakir says, is confident that Joe Biden is in a very strong position to win this election, but nevertheless feels there are areas the campaign can continue to improve upon. He has been in direct contact with the Biden team and has urged them to put more emphasis on how they will raise wages, create millions of good-paying jobs, lower the cost of prescription drugs, and expand healthcare coverage. And Sanders also kind of confirmed that he has these views during a recent interview on MSNBC. Let's watch.
Biden's in an excellent position to win this election, but I think we have got to do more as a campaign than just go after Trump. Trump is a disaster. I think most people know it. But we also have to give people a reason to vote for Joe Biden. And Joe has some pretty strong positions on the economy. And I think we should be talking about that more than we have. Now, we have done, Ali, 8 battleground states virtual rallies, talking to, several million people. And I think what people want to hear is what Joe is going to do to raise the minimum wage. And he supports a $15 an hour minimum wage. What he's going to do to make sure that we create millions of good-paying jobs in this country, and he has a very strong plan for the infrastructure. He knows that we can create jobs combating climate change, which God knows we need to do, seeing what's going on in the West Coast right now. They want equal pay for equal work. They want us to expand health care to as many people as possible, lower the cost of prescription drugs. I think those are some of the issues that people want to hear a little bit more from the Biden campaign about.
So, Cenk, Bernie is essentially telling Biden, help me help you. And I don't know if he's going to take the advice, but he needs to, because Biden is falling behind if you look at some of the polling in swing states, which we'll get to in just a minute, but I wanted you to jump in.
Yeah. So, look, I think Biden's still winning by a comfortable enough margin. But yes, when I see the polls going down to 1 to 3 points in Florida, of course, given the fact that this might be the last election if Trump wins, of course that makes me nervous. Now, I'm going to talk slow for people who are in the establishment and have trouble understanding things. We want Trump to lose really, really badly. And by the way, way worse than you do. And certainly your leaders. Nancy Pelosi brazenly said halfway through, well, Trump's good for fundraising for me. That was one of the reasons she gave early on for not wanting to impeach Trump. It's sick. On the other hand, we are desperate for Donald Trump to not be president anymore because he's fascist and is a threat to our democracy. And we said that from day one. Now, you guys are starting to catch on to that with a couple of months left. Welcome to the party. So, yes, we want Biden to beat Trump. Is that clear enough? So, and we talk about it on the show all the time. We talk about voting all the time. But people in the establishment are losers. So they love to set up excuses ahead of time like they did in 2016 and they're doing now. Well, in case we lose with our dumbass strategy, We'll say that progressives didn't vote enough and that it was the Young Turks' fault and Bernie Sanders' fault. Okay, that's who the losers in this house. That's why we're nervous, because you guys are sorry-ass losers who set up excuses instead of trying to win the goddamn election. You've got to win. So now, in terms of the particular suggestions, Bernie Sanders is saying policies that Joe Biden already has. So if Biden actually believes those policies, he doesn't have to move an inch. And in that case, we're not asking him to move an inch. We're saying, hey, schmuck, if you do believe in it, why don't you tell everybody you're going to do $15 minimum wage? That would double the wages of millions of Americans who will then have, yes, honestly, an incentive to go vote for you, because you're going to do the right thing and you're going to look out for American workers instead of their corporate bosses. So it's everybody wants prescription drugs lowered, the price lowered.
Yeah.
So much so that Trump is pretending to do it. So Biden already has that policy. So why don't you emphasize it? We're asking you to win the election instead of doing what you're doing now. And remember now, everybody, the looters are rioters. The Republicans are right about them. They're terrible. And Republicans are so right, I'll put up half my convention were nothing but Republicans. And remember, I'm going to be more of a hawk than they are in foreign policy. No, do things that are popular.
No, but I know you think Donald Trump is stupid. I think he's stupid too, okay? But just bear with me as I make this point, because I think that this is really what's happening. I think there are people who are somewhat smart working on Trump's campaign, and I think they understand that with tens of millions of Americans unemployed right now, they need to do anything and everything to prevent Biden from endorsing or promoting policies that would actually appeal to a lot of voters across the board. And so they have pushed this campaign calling him like a radical leftist and a Marxist. And what does Biden do? He responds with, no, I'm not. No. In fact, I condemn and reject the rioters and looters. What? Right? Like he's decided to really move away from any robust policy discussion because he's so afraid of the Trump campaign painting him as a leftist. No, lean into it, okay? Because those are policies, as Bernie said, that appeal to a lot of people, especially right now in this moment of increased desperation due to the coronavirus, right? So I don't know. I don't know if he's going to take the advice, but I did promise that I would show you what the polling shows in some of the swing states. So let's take a look at that. This is from Real Clear Politics. They take all the different polls and do the averages and all that. And if you look at Florida, Pennsylvania, Michigan, Wisconsin, North Carolina, and Arizona, Trump did close that giant gap. So things aren't looking good in Florida, okay? And that's a bad sign. Biden is only leading by 1.2 points. He's likely to lose North Carolina. Biden's only leading by 0.8 points. He has the largest lead in Arizona with 5.6 points. But if you look at the next graph, you'll see how there was a far larger gap between them. And unfortunately, Trump was able to narrow that gap quite a bit. There it is.
Yeah. So look, guys, the Democrats could lose Florida and still win easy. They don't have to win North Carolina at all, and Biden still has a small lead in North Carolina. The fact that Biden has a lead in North Carolina is a great sign. So I don't want to create unnecessary panic, but I also don't want to create overconfidence like they did in 2016. At the end of the day, if you don't vote, nobody wins anything. And Biden has to win by over 3 points in the popular vote to have a shot at winning the Electoral College. So there's plenty of reasons why you should still be concerned. But in terms of these specific policies that Bernie's talking about, including equal pay for women, I mean, there's just no downside to it at all. So we're not talking about saying, hey, defund the police. We know he's not going to do that. We're not saying Medicare for all. Are we going to push for that after the election? Goddamn right we are, whether it's Trump or Biden. But in the midst of the campaign, we get it. Biden's not for Medicare for all. We're saying do the bare minimum, $15 minimum wage. So the only reasons why they might not be doing it is either they're not actually going to do any of that, and so they don't want to overpromise it now, which is just so painful to think about. Or the other reason is they think, oh, no, we have to appear really, really Republican before the election in order to win. So let's not feature any of the things that are in our proposals that are incredibly popular. Raising the minimum wage got 62% of the vote in Missouri, 68% of the vote in Arkansas. They're incredibly popular, even in red states. But the idiots who lead the Democratic Party think, no, I'd rather believe Rush Limbaugh and Fox News about what voters think rather than what the polling actually indicates. So I'll try to copy Republican ideas before an election. Meanwhile, Trump and the other guys go, I'm against war. I'd like to lower prescription drug prices. I want to protect Social Security and Medicare. They're pretending to be progressives before the election. God, I mean, there's no end to the stupidity of the Democratic establishment. If we're in a panic at all, it is because we can't have these serial bunglers that are the leaders of the Democratic Party bungle this particular election. We cannot have you lose this one. So please remove your head from inside your ass.
It's a good place to end it. That does it for our stories today.
All right, guys. We got a great show for you tomorrow. We'll see you there.